Hello, fellow Crusaders, and welcome to episode 3 of our Decades of Action. We are in the 2000s. My name's Sean Waskook, with me as always is Brian Michaels. We hope you guys have been enjoying our journey so far through the Decades of Action. We've done the 80s and the 90s. Now we are into the turn of the century, which is really when not when I really started paying attention to movies. I said last week that like once Jurassic Park came out, but this is when the move snobbiness came out because I started working at the movie theater. And so this is when I was like, I could see everything, and I didn't have to worry about what my parents were, were at home. I didn't have to worry about, all this stuff because at this point I was God. It's like I worked at the movie theater. I could see everything for free. I could watch whatever the hell I want. And so like I went from like I watched a good chunk of movies to I've seen everything that I wanted to see anyway. But yeah, 2000s. You were you just kind of you obviously you weren't the movie or the video store anymore, but were you just full on cinemaphile at that point?
For me, the 90s, I was just all movies. I managed a video store for like 10 years at that point. And everybody I talked to was movie fans, whether it be friends or customers or whatever. And like my life was movies. And then in 2000, I got married and changed jobs. So like not only did I not work around movies all the time, but like I spend more time with like my wife, who's not really into movies at all, which is weird that I would end up with something like that.
Yeah. I mean, opposites attract.
She's not weird. That's not her thing. And then, like, my friends, like, I moved away, so I didn't see my same friends very often. Once in a while, I'd go get together with them. So I think I still saw not everything like I used to see, but I still saw a lot of movies. But I wasn't, like, seeing as much of it, with my groups of friends that were as enthusiastic about movies as I was.
Yeah, I worked for, I'll just call them out because they're not there anymore. I worked for AMC Oakview 24. In Omaha, Nebraska, from 2000 to 2004. Basically, my whole high school tenure, I was working there, severely underpaid. But anyway, so like from 2000 to 2004, I got to see everything. And then I left them in 2004 because I was going to college and I just fucking needed more money than what they were paying me. And while for the first like couple of years, like I basically still was able to go see whatever I wanted for free. Just because I developed that relationship with everyone that had worked there. It was, I had college, I had my other jobs, I had wrestling, I had baseball, I had all this other stuff. So movies were still prominent for me, but not as high as the first, half of the decade. So I didn't get to see as much, not by today's standard. Now I can go back and watch all that crap. But like at that moment, from like 05 to 10, I would see the big stuff, and then obviously streaming and everything wasn't out then yet. So you basically were either that was kind of also the beginning of going away of the video stores. They weren't completely gone, but you were starting to see less and less of them around. And I only really had like, I think 2 video stores in Omaha, and they both were like 20 plus minute drives away from where I was. So it got to the point of like, I either needed to really, really want to see this movie and then buy it on DVD, which was like, it's like, that was like kind of the whole thing I hate about video games. It's like, I really want to play this video game. I have no idea if it's going to be good, but I really, really want to play it, but you got to buy it. And it's like, then you buy it, you're like, oh, God, I have 15 minutes, like, this game sucks. And then you got to go trade it in for like 30% of what you paid for. And movies kind of felt that way too. It was like, I really, really had to be like bought in on it to buy it without watching it, or I had to just find time to make it to the theater. But yeah, but from 2000 though to 2004, I was everything. Saw literally everything that I could. But like we said in the first 2 episodes, action kind of had to revolutionize itself again in the 2000s, because while 80s had kind of figured out this perfect formula but hadn't really perfected it yet, 90s had perfected it. And the 90s was just hitting, banger after banger after banger of the same formula of like Die Hard and, all this other stuff. But by the time we got to the 2000s, and I think a lot of it was also because of the fans growing up as well, even from your age to my age, that by the time we got to the 2000s, the same old shtick, you couldn't really rest on your laurels anymore. You couldn't do that shit anymore. It's not that they were all bad. It's just people didn't necessarily care about those kinds of films. Same thing when it happened with horror. is that, you know, by 2000s, the slasher genre, which basically rode through most of the 80s and 90s, outside of Scream and like people didn't really care about slasher movies anymore. And so the same thing with action, they kind of had to change the way they did things. They had to change the way they shot action. They had to change the way they did their fighting styles. And Matrix kind of helped them along the way in 99. But that was the other thing too, is that everyone saw the Matrix and was like, we could be the next Matrix. Let's do this. Let's do this. And all of them, for the most part, failed in comparison, and just kind of came off as parody.
The Matrix became the new Die Hard. It was what everybody tried to be, and very few succeeded.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, we could be grungy and edgy, and let's look like we hop the
soundtrack and the slow mo, and
yes, and let's make sure the entire cast looks like they shop at Hot Topic and all this leather and all that stuff. And it's just like, no, it's like Matrix worked because it was unique and revolutionary to what it did, and it was a perfect, you know, lightning in a bottle. And
the Matrix couldn't copy it until
exactly. It's like even the sequels. But honestly, I will say this. God damn it! Second one's Resurrection, right?
Reloaded.
Or is that the fourth one? Reloaded.
Fourth one's Resurrection.
Yeah. Reloaded, Revolution, Resurrection. Reloaded, I thought for the most part was figuring it out until it got too bloated in I'm so sophisticated that my dialogue is going to be blah, 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 blah. And that was the downfall for Reloaded, is you had like the French guy.
Yeah, the action parts of 2 and 3 were good. It was when they stopped for a half-hour info dump from the architect.
Yeah, or like I said, the Frenchman with Monica Bellucci.
Mostly.
Exactly. They were so far up their own ass because they thought they were so superior to everybody else that exactly that they could just, you know, you guys are gonna fucking sit there, you're gonna gobble all this bullshit. And it's like, no, we really won't. We'll just fast forward through those things once we have this on home on DVD. And like I said, not even like you said, the Wachowskis couldn't even implement what they were trying to do visually. You know, action wise, they still had it.
Oh, yeah.
But they completely lost the narrative on their story, and the Matrix kind of, you know, whimpered out. You know, now they did have stuff like the Animatrix, which isn't necessarily a movie; it's a bunch of shorts, which I thought worked really well. And they even tried to do it again, you know, a couple years back with Resurrection, and it really fucking didn't work. I think we all were like hoping it would work, and it fucking didn't. But there were so many movies that were trying to do this, and it just didn't work because The Matrix was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime choice, or a once-in-a-lifetime movie. And there's certain films that are like that. It's like, this movie rocked, this movie was awesome, let's try to, you know, Hollywood being Hollywood, let's just clone this 18 different times with a different cast. Sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. And the 2000s really had to kind of figure this shit out.
I feel like just like horror, I think the 2000s was really like you already touched on it, was kind of the decade of like change and kind of finding their new selves, because your tough guy era was over. Your Stallones and Schwarzeneggers kind of limped into the decade. They were still putting out something here and there, but they weren't near what they used to be. Yeah. I mean, like even like the Terminator franchise kind of, you know, tried a couple of installments in the 2000s that were some of the weaker installments. But Stallone and Schwarzenegger, they had moved on to like whether it be comedies or doing some more dramatic things. Occasionally an action movie that wasn't really a hit. Your Jean-Claude Van Damme's, your Steven Seagals, they had all but disappeared. In their place, I mean, you had like, I mean, Jason Statham showed up. He was kind of a new kind of action star, and but he wasn't like a blockbuster action star like, you know, Stallone Schwarzenegger.
I always felt Statham, his standalone movies are fine. Mm-hmm. I feel like Statham always elevates or looks amazing when he's part of a group. Yeah. When he's got a superior cast around him and he's not the staple point, that's when I think Statham is at its best, because it's when he comes in, like even Fast and Furious franchise, not that this was in the 2000s because he was well in 2010s at that point, but like even like Italian Job, if he's not the focal point, then he comes in with these quick quips or cool scenes and stuff like that. It's like, dude, Statham's awesome at this. But when you put Statham front and center, granted, he's kind of been hitting lately, 20 years later, with like Beekeeper and even A Working Man was good in that. I don't think it's necessarily because of him. It's just he's very stoic with his action. So you got to have very different around him.
Movies for me, because when he's part of an ensemble, whether it be, you know, your Fast and the Furious or your Italian Jobs or whatever, I think those tend to be the better movies. But when he's like the star of a movie, whether it be Crank, whether it be Transporter, whether it be, some of his one-offs or even his recent ones, I still enjoy most of those, but those are just like the cheese-tastic kind
Yeah.
of action movies. It's a different kind of thing, and I enjoy those. But we didn't really have any like big. I mean, The Rock started his career. He had the
The
rundown and
Rock,
kind of broke out.
yeah. The
Because I mean,
Rock was the late 2000s, but he hadn't really kind of figured out. It was just more like, let's just throw The Rock in something.
yeah, this
And
was like, the Scorpion King was shit, but then he did Rundown. Like, wow, he's actually pretty good in this. I enjoy this movie a lot. And then he did a couple more in the 2000s, which kind of started him on his path. But like you said, he didn't really even hit his stride till the next decade. So he wasn't really
no,
a massive star in
well,
this
because
decade.
he had Walking Tall and he had Rundown, and then he was like, I want to show that I can. So he did like Gridiron Gang, Be Cool, and
Kids movies, yeah.
Southland Tale. And then he got stuck. Then he got stuck in Disney Purgatory, and then it wasn't until 2010s where he kind of like, I think, did his like obligations with Disney, and was like, okay, I'm going back to doing some badass shit. Vin Diesel, I guess, was considered probably one of the main action stars of the 2000s. Matt Damon all of a sudden went from like, Good Will Hunting to this. Ben Affleck was doing more action films in the 2000s. Liam Neeson, like those were.
Yeah, at the tail end of the decade, you had Liam Neeson's Taken kind of open that door where like all these aged, all these older guys tried to go back and be like, they basically tried to remake Taken. But that was most of the 2010s because that kind of hit with Taken in 2008, 2009. But you are right that like all the old franchises were kind of done. Some of them put out installments here and there. I mean, even as you go into things are besides action, like the Star Wars. They ended their prequel trilogy pretty weakly. People didn't really like that trilogy. Indiana Jones put out one disappointing, installment. But then you had the Fast and the Furious. You had the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Lord of the Rings, the Bourne. You mentioned Matt Damon, Transformers. So like all these new franchises started, and I think that's what most action was because like the studios like decided that IP is king. We're gonna find a franchise because it's too expensive to take chances on one-off action movies. So if you look at like the 2000s action movies, you realize how few of them existed that weren't part of them trying to start a new franchise.
Yeah, and I'm looking at my list here, and only of my top one is now a franchise, but when it came out, it was just a sequel. Another one is a franchise that's going to be rebooted here very shortly. And then everything else is one-offs, for the most part. They might have done a trilogy down the road, but it didn't like start a whole franchise thing. It was kind of more like it felt like, really, we're going back to this? Like, okay. And I think that's because by design, I think you and I, like, we enjoy, the IPs, but it's the ones that really kind of stood on their own 2 feet that really kind of stood out to us. And sometimes it was actors who were up and coming. You got Gerard Butler, who just kind of, he was Phantom of the Opera, and then all of a sudden Butler, late 2000s, became like king action dude. Brad Pitt was still out there doing his thing. You still had Will Smith. Will Smith had, iRobot and Bad Boys and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, he was still out there doing his thing too. But yeah, it was just I don't want to say 2000s was a weird time, but it definitely was a paradigm shift in terms of the action. Absolutely. Like, you're still going to get your shoot 'em ups and your blow 'em ups and your gunfires and all this stuff, but it also started some new stuff, like the shaky cam with the Bournes and just like different aspects, full on CGI movies like the Transformers, where it's like, look, we got actors, but they're not the action scenes. The action scenes is going to be these CGI robots. They're going to do all the fucking work, and then the actors are just kind of there to elevate the story, for you. Jurassic Park, that died.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, Jurassic Park, that's another franchise that busted out a weak third film in like 2001 or something, and that died, and we didn't see that again for another 10 plus years. And that was one that people were kind of resting their laurels on as well. It was one of those things where 2000s just had to grow up, and it had to come up with some new shit. Now, sometimes they'd go back to the old formula, and it would work, but it was a once in like maybe 15 chance it would work. But they had to reinvent the game in 2000.
Yeah, and they did almost to their detriment, I think, because during this decade, you didn't see it really hit its stride until again the 2010s. But starting in the 2000s was the shift. Part of the reason they watched it wasn't so much just unique action movies, is because they fell in love with comic book movies. Because you had, your Batman films had just kind of finished their run, and so they scrambled on to the next big thing. And then came the 2000s, and you have X-Men, you have Spider-Man, you have Nolan's Batman. By the time you hit the tail end of the year of the decade, you're starting to get the MCU with the birth of Iron Man and Incredible Hulk. And then even all the one-offs from Daredevil and Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider. I mean, those are one-offs, but you mean the smaller franchises.
Yeah.
And it just, and as you know, everyone talked about, all they make anymore now are comic book movies, and they still make plenty of other stuff. But I will admit that you don't see as much kind of unique action because they have grabbed onto these IPs. They have grabbed onto these franchises. And the 2000s were definitely part of that shift. Now, I don't know about you, but when we get into my lists, I figure someday we're going to do a comic book one.
Yeah.
So I left off I've made one exception, but otherwise I left off comic book movies.
Yeah, I have a graphic novel or graphic comic on my list. But
for me, yeah.
What's that?
I don't count those comic book for me. So I actually have the same one as you. Plus, I do have an additional actual comic book like superhero movie. But for the most part, I decided I'm sure we'll do comic books by itself separately. So
exactly, I think eventually we'll do our own decades of comic book movies. But yeah, so there is no Spider-Mans, there's no X-Men's, there's no MCU on our lists from here on. There isn't, at least not on mine. I might have to make one change for 2010s. I do have one, which is fine because the 2010s I had a lot to choose from. I can remove that one, but it's just because, like I said, it has its own list. Same thing with Lord of the Rings. We are gonna be doing fantasy sci-fi its own show. Now, like I said, I know, but you did Terminator and Aliens. It's like, well, it's because those are just like there. And with Lord of the Rings is great. It's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Brian's not as high on Lord of the Rings as I am, but there's still so many others that are worthy to talk about in the 2000s that Lord of the Rings can wait.
And I also feel like Terminator 2 and Aliens, the ones we like really kind of stressed, those I think are action movies first that take place in a sci-fi situation or world. I think that Lord of the Rings is fantasy first that has action in it.
So. Exactly. So for everyone who's gonna flip out for no comic book movies or Lord of the Rings,
know that we love them. They just aren't going to be on this list.
Exactly. Trust me, you guys have seen enough of us doing MCU videos to know that we like the comic book movies. It's just we want to dedicate our time to the movies that maybe people don't pay attention to. Well, not saying they don't pay attention to, but we want to acknowledge them. We only have so many movies to talk about, and if we spent all the time talking about Lord of the Rings and comic book movies, then these movies are not going to get talked about. So we're going to talk about these movies because they deserve to be talked about as well. Speaking of that, though, there are some that are maybe overtly praised or overly talked about that maybe don't deserve as much as they did. Now, I'm sure at least two of my overrated is going to piss some people off, especially one. And it's just it is what it is, and it's personal preference for me. I by no means have we said, and we said this in the 80s episode, our overrateds are not movies we don't like. We like these movies. They're for the most part we like them. If there were worse films, then we would have a worse list, and they're not these. But these are movies that we definitely are going back on. You know what? These aren't as good as everyone makes them out to be. They're fine, but they're definitely not like top tier, like to the point that everyone puts them on a fucking pedestal. And that's why we have these overrated. Now, do you have an honorable mention, or do you just have your three?
I do have one honorable mention.
Okay.
And that is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
That is my number one.
That's your number one.
That's the number one I wrote when I went through, and I was like, okay, what? I'll go definitely Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
You want to wait and talk about that? Just do it.
Let's get it out of the way.
I'll say my you have it at your number one, so I'll give you most of the time. But
I don't have that much more to say probably than what you will. I'll just say that I remember when Crouching Tiger came out, everyone was losing their goddamn minds for this. And I will say this. If I have to choose, and granted, same kind of film, apples and oranges, but I will watch House of Flying Daggers 10 times before I watch Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I just never really was into the whole wire work thing. I know it's a type of style. And I'm not saying they weren't bad at it. I mean, didn't this get fucking nominated for like Best Picture or something?
Probably, yeah.
Definitely Best International Film. It's nothing against the cast, because I think everyone in it is really, really good. I just think that this movie, at its time, was, once again, brand new stuff in 2000s. People weren't prepared for it. Now, granted, for overseas, it probably wasn't brand new. It was just more, it was kind of like when Jackie Chan came here, everyone freaked out. I was like, well, yeah, Jackie Chan's been doing that for 10 plus years over here. I think it came over here at the perfect time, and everyone just lost their minds because they weren't used to it, because obviously with streaming not being around, the overseas, like being able to watch stuff from Japan, Korea, all that kind of stuff was a lot harder for people in the US to watch it back then. So when this came over, people were like, oh my God. I was just never really on that boat. I never...
Because I mean, we started getting some of the kind of Asian imports, like I talked about in the 90s with like the Jackie Chans, and towards the end of the decade, Jet Li. And then you started having more like the Chow Yun Fat. And most of these people came in more like the crime kind of, gun fu kind of action. There's a little bit of martial arts in there. But this is the first one that kind of, or at least the first one that hit big in terms of like that very, epic, kind of graceful, the wire work style. And I did not like this at all. I went and watched this, and did it look pretty? Sure. But I was bored to death by this movie. And the fact that you can even still call it an action movie is, I don't know, it's borderline to me. But I agree. I put it on my list too, because it's technically an action movie. But it was just like everything I didn't want in my imported action movies. And some people loved it, and this had like a relatively short life. I mean, I think by the end of the 2000s, they kind of weren't hitting here anymore. But for a while, there was like this and Hero and House of Flying Daggers and a lot of movies like that were And
it was nominated for Best Picture.
The one that got praised so much, and I don't get it, but that's just me.
Yeah, I got nominated for Best Picture and Best Director from Ang Lee, which also is a director that I just have never really been a huge fan of. Still did probably one of the worst comic book movies of all time with the Hulk. I fucking hate Ang Lee's Hulk. So with a fiery passion. There's only like two other comic movies that I hate more. It is right in the upper echelon of hated comic book movies for me. What's that?
Did you have an honorable mention?
I kind of, but it's one of those like I did the I grouped them kind of thing. So I'll go with this one next, which is probably the one that's gonna piss everyone off. I thought Crouching Tiger was gonna piss people off, but you did it for me. So fantastic.
You had it right higher, though.
What's that? Yeah, I did have it right higher. I definitely had it right higher. My honorable mention / I guess second and third, since you took Crouching Tiger for me. I have never. I think the movies are good. I just never really have gotten like out of it, and that's the Bourne trilogy. I'm sorry, I don't buy Matt Damon as an action star. I don't. I just don't. I love Matt Damon. Brian knows I love Matt Damon because I defended Matt Damon like a motherfucker when Air came out like a couple years ago. I like Matt Damon as an actor. Do I look at Matt Damon going, that's a fucking kick-ass motherfucker? No. When the shaky cam came out, it was much like the Wire War for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It was a revolutionary new thing that people were like, this feels so real, and it doesn't feel like it's stunt doubles. You guys kind of realize that shaky cam, hand to hand, and Bourne trilogy reminds me a lot of Steven Seagal, where it's better. It's better. So don't attack me just yet. But a lot of it is literally just them doing, and which is what Seagal does. It's done on a way better scale. way fucking better scale. I just never really loved the story of it. I thought it was just a little too far-fetched. Like, oh, here's this perfect agent who had amnesia, and the entire world's coming after him, and no one can stop him. But like, if you hand-to-hand combat with him, you're gonna die. But no one in the world can stop this one dude. Like, it was funny and it was plausible. Like, when like the James Bonds came out, and it's like, oh, he's the greatest spy in the world, blah blah blah. Which in the 2000s, they redid Bond with Daniel Craig, and at least Daniel Craig there felt more believable. Like, he can be stopped. He can be captured. He can be hurt. Bourne just was like kind of almost like the newish Bond, and he still felt kind of superhuman. He was smarter than everybody else. He was faster than everybody else. No one could really beat him in a fight. And he just always seemed like he was 10 steps ahead of everybody, even though everyone else thought they were 10 steps ahead of him. And I watched the trilogy, and I liked it for what it was. I didn't love it. I never watched Jeremy Renner's one, and I never even watched Jason Bourne after that. Why? Because I just didn't care about this franchise.
Here's my thing is I actually like Bourne, but I cannot tell any of those movies apart. I mean, obviously the Jeremy Renner one. The Jeremy Renner one, obviously, because it's a different person in it. But you could show me any scene from any Bourne movie, and I couldn't tell you which one it was in, unless maybe like if the female sidekick of that particular one is in it. Maybe
if the woman from isn't she from Run Low Run?
Yeah.
If she's in it, if she's in it, I know it's the first one. If you show me with him and Julia Stiles, maybe it's a third one, but she's in all fucking three. But it's just like, I like spy espionage and conspiracy theory films. I do. But this one, I just felt like everyone was like, oh, up
and
here.
More so than any other franchise, I feel like these movies are all the same. It's like, I cannot tell anything different about them. And it just feels like, okay, like every time I went and saw one, I was like, did I enjoy my time sitting in the theater watching it? Sure. But it was like, I feel like I've already watched this, or that it's just kind of extending the same exact stuff over and over again, to the point where it's like, that's fine, but for people to praise it, because everyone's like, oh, it's not like those stupid action movies like, Transformers stuff. This is intelligent action, and it's like, but they're just doing the same thing over and over.
It's just the same thing, but a different flavor. It is. It's not even a different flavor. It's just like 10% more different.
Honestly, I like the Jeremy Renner one more than most of the Matt Damon ones.
Why is that, coming from someone who has not seen it? Just because it wasn't Matt Damon, or
while it did kind of have some of the same stuff, there was a little bit of a different storyline to it as well. And then I think that I liked Rachel Weisz more than I like, Julia Stiles or Famke Potente.
Obviously, yeah.
And so I think it was just, you know what it is? I think that just because it was different, because it was like, okay, we watched Matt Damon do the same thing. At least this is kind of the same movie, but at least we have some new blood in here, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
It wasn't like my top 30 action movies of the decade, but it was fine. It was enjoyable.
But there's so many people who just put the Bourne trilogy, even though it's not even a trilogy anymore. There's fucking 5 of them now if you count the Renner one. But so many people just like hold a torch for the Bourne franchise, and I just don't see it. I only got one left now, so feel free to go.
I got a bunch. And my number 3 spot then, I have, it's more than one movie. I'm going to cheat and put them together, but in my case, it's okay.
I literally just did it with
together at 1.2, and that'd be Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. Kill Bill 1 and 2 together. It's a fine Tarantino movie. It's definitely lower tier Tarantino movie for me, and a lot of people consider these like their favorites, and I think these are the worst. I think these are the ones that show that Uma Thurman's not a very good actress. I think these are the ones where Quentin Tarantino like embraced, his worst qualities in terms of like some of the over the top, like, camera work, or some of the dialogue seem more forced here than most other ones. So the action scenes seem more stiff. There was I think more like homages and references to other, old martial arts movies and things in here that just felt forced and didn't fit. And it's just the tone of it, the style of it, the action of it. I thought that this movie was fine, but I think that I put them on my most overrated because a lot of people consider them like some of their favorite Tarantino movies.
Hence why he put it on overrated, because it's in my faves, and I will be talking about it later. So I'll hold off and talk about it later, but I'm gonna let Brian get it all out so that way I can just say my piece when I get to it and go from there.
Yeah, my next overrated is a comic book movie, graphic novel movie, if you will, and that is Watchmen.
Okay, I was about to get very mad at you if it was the other one.
Watchmen is unwatchable, honestly, because like you have a few good actors in there, and then like a lot of like D-list people. but the characters I didn't find interesting. It's like we've obviously seen in movies since then they can do, you know, dark, gritty superheroes instead of, happy ones. You can do, basically a not I guess satire is the right word, of kind of comic book characters and comic book villains and stories, but you can do them well. I think that this is so bad. The costumes are bad. The I think the production design is bad. I think that Zack Snyder this is by the time he got like into the overuse of the slow motion, where it's just somebody be lighting a cigarette and let's show it in slow mo. Um, I don't like the look of it. I don't like the dialogue. I don't like I mean, there isn't, when you think about it, there's not a ton of action in here, but it is listed under action movies, so I'm going to include it. Yeah, this was just a total miss for me. But I honestly, I don't even blame Zack Snyder. I mean, while I didn't love the filmmaking, I think the problem's the source material. I've never understood the people's obsession with Watchmen.
I will say that the HBO series is fantastic, but it's not the same story. It's not the same. It's not even in the same story as the movie. It's not. They're not telling the same thing. Like there's characters from the movie in the TV series, but it's not following the same storyline as the film. I remember when this movie was coming out, I was so and then I never read Watchmen, so I didn't have like. I didn't have the source material like there going, oh, yeah, I was just like, this looks cool. You know, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan and, oh God, Rorschach, help me. Jackie Earle Haley, who I've always been a big fan of. And this looks like it's going to be like one of his big fucking moments. And Malin Ackerman and Patrick Wilson, and Billy Crudup. Crudup. I like all these people. And I was like, all right, this is a great group of people that I all enjoy and they look awesome. And it's Zack Snyder's shooting, so everything looks sleek and cool. And I feel like it started off really well. I was bummed when they killed Jeffrey Dean Morgan really fast because he was the one person I was really, really excited for. And it was one of those movies that's like, it started off interesting, and then as it kept going and going and going and going, that by the time it got to the end, I was like, when like you find out the big twist that I'm blanking, the Ozymandias. Yeah, Ozymandias. Like when he turns and he's like, I don't really care anymore.
I don't care. You've already made me sit and watch a big blue glowing dong for this long. I just don't care about anything.
Yeah, I was like, I don't like. It's supposed to be like this big like, no, and I was like, I don't care. It's just like, and I've gone back and like watched like the director's cut. Like, it's like, you know what? It's like, maybe it's like a Daredevil situation where it's like Ben Affleck's Daredevil is aggressively bad, even though I love Colin Farrell's Bullseye. It's aggressively bad, but the director's cut is fine.
And especially, we didn't really know, I guess we didn't know it at the time yet, but Zack Snyder, I mean, when he does director's cuts, whether it be Rebel Moon, whether it be Batman versus Superman, whether it be whatever, his director's cuts do tend to be better. The problem is he makes stories that are too big to fit into like a 2-hour movie.
Exactly.
But in this case, it didn't help.
I tried to I was like, I'm going to go back and rewatch this director's cut because I feel like at the time I just didn't have the attention span for it. So I watched it like a couple years back and I still was like, I couldn't do it. Now, like I said, the TV series, fantastic. It's incredibly well done, but Snyder didn't do this TV series. And that's like I said, it's not Snyder. I don't think it's the source material. It just, I think, and a lot of people are like, well, you love The Boys, where it's about a bunch of asshole superheroes. But I was like, yeah, but The Boys is like, The Boys is better. It's entertaining
in every possible way.
It's fun. And I think it's got a way better cast, and it's written way better. And it's like Watchmen was just kind of bloated and somber and lacked any, unless you're just in love with the source material, lacked any excitement through it. Now, especially when I heard after the movie came out, I was like, the original only had a giant fucking octopus in it that was attacking the time. I'm like, why the fuck was that not in the movie? That at least would have brought something. Now,
if you want to tell me the Watchmen, whether it be the movie or the source material, paved the way for things like The Boys or even Kick-Ass or whatever else, it's like, oh, I can respect things for kind of paving the way or being the groundwork. but it was done so much better. And that
Yeah,
original
I mean,
one, it may have opened some doors, but it still wasn't good.
it's the same. It's the same
And as
thing.
usual, when I talk about all these shows that we do, whether it be end of year, whatever, I can just accept that movies are fine. Not every movie's going to be for me. It's when a movie isn't very good, but is praised so highly. That's what gets to me. I'm like, what is it you're seeing that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, and I mean the same argument with like Watchmen could walk so everyone else could run. That's the same argument that people could use for. Granted, I didn't hate the movie like everyone else did, but John Carter. John Carter was like the first sci-fi, like one of the very first sci-fi films. Is like, well, if it wasn't for John Carter, there'd be no Star Wars, there'd be no this, there'd be no this. Yes, you're right, but they did it so much better that when you go back and watch like something like John Carter or Watchmen, you can see it's like, yeah, maybe this came out first before all these other ones, and I could appreciate it more. But the problem is that it didn't come out first. It was written first, but it was adapted way fucking after everything else, and it doesn't match what everyone else has done because they took the formula, much like the 90s action to the 80s. They perfected it. So by the time you go back and watch the old source material, it doesn't land. And that's what Watchmen is. It just doesn't work.
So I have one left. What's your
I got one left. My last one, I brought it up earlier real quick, and it started a trend that is still going on to this day. It's way better than this one. It spawned a trilogy that no one I felt cared to see, and that is Taken. Taken is one really well done not action scene. It's one really well done moment with him on the phone to the kidnappers. You take that scene out of Taken. Taken is not good. It is one really kick-ass, badass scene with Liam Neeson telling, "I will find you and I will kill you. Good luck." That is a great fucking scene. Remove that. Taken is not a good movie. It's not, and it spawned 2 other films. I know everyone loves to attack the jumping the fence like 20 cuts scene. Everyone attacks that. Wasn't that like in the third one or the second one?
That was the third one.
It was the third one. But Liam Neeson's an old ass motherfucker. And I love Liam Neeson. I can't wait to see what he does with Naked Gun because that trailer came out and it looked fucking funny as hell. But that's a comedy, so they can work around that. You literally can have a stunt that will pop into that scene as a joke and it'll land. But I never got the Taken series. We've seen this done multiple times with a girl getting kidnapped. Hell, A Working Man, which Statham just came out, was it last week or two, is literally kind of the same fucking story as Taken. Done way better though. Man on Fire with the little girl and Denzel Washington, done way fucking better. It's not like it revolutionized anything. I think all it did was just like, hey, old people could be action stars too.
Well,
which I did that all the time already.
I enjoyed Taken, and I enjoyed it at the time, and I probably wouldn't call it overrated, only because when I look at it, I don't dislike the movie for the movie. I dislike the movie for what it did. Because it did open the door to all these movies that wanted to be that exact same kind of story, that same kind of style, and not only just people in general. Liam Neeson for the next 15 years of his career was basically just doing
longer than that.
Other versions of this movie, whether it be the direct sequels like Taken 2 and 3 or the other 15 indistinguishable movies that he made that you could show me a shot and I probably wouldn't be able to tell you which movie it's from. And there's one or two, gems in there that are actually pretty enjoyable, but there's a whole lot of just pumping out the formula. And it's not
I mean, throw a dartboard, or you can have a dartboard of just random words and just throw them.
Cold
okay. A Walk Amongst the Tombstones, or whatever the fuck that title's called. Yeah, Liam Neeson. We'll throw him in that. Generic storyboard. Throw it $1. Boom.
Honest Thief. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Dead wife. Boom. Killers killed someone because of drugs. Boom. Okay, here's your script, guys. Neeson will do it because it just make sure you got some good stunt work.
I don't blame the guy. He got a resurgence, got to make a paycheck. Good for you, but just know that most of them weren't good. And yeah.
I will watch Liam Neeson in almost everything. except those movies. Because I still remember.
Even I gave benefit of the doubt for a while. I'd go see all these movies, and like I said, there were some that were better than others. I mean, they weren't. None of them were actively bad until you got. But then it was like these last few where I just didn't even bother seeing. I'm like, okay, even I'm done with this.
I think Cold Pursuit broke me.
Yeah.
And even then, he was already long expired on these movies. But I remember I went and saw Cold Pursuit, which I think was 2019, 2020. And I just remember going, why the fuck am I in this theater right now? Why the fuck did I waste money?
You know, I had the same feeling as I was watching this movie, and I'm like, I really wanted to like that one. And then, but then it had this weird tone to it, too.
It had a weird tone. It was badly acted. The dialogue was horrific. It was one of the worst films of the year.
I don't know if there's the next one or if there's some in between, but I think it was called Ice Road or Ice Trucker.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it might have been Ice Road. I would look it up on IMDb, but there's like 50 of them.
Because that's the one where like I got, I don't know, halfway through it, and I had that same moment where I'm like, why am I watching this? And I actually turned it off. Like, I'm not interested. I don't care where this movie goes. I turned it off, and then that was like a measurable point. Because like after that, there was like lots of them I didn't even bother to see.
Yeah, and Taken literally was the leap, into that. And like I said, there are other actors who are doing the same thing that he's doing. Hell, we're about to go. Is it this year with Nobody 2 with Bob Odenkirk? But it was done way fucking better. Now granted, John Wick helped kind of like stamp that down. Like, yeah, Taken this, and here was John Wick. Okay, this is now a genre kind of thing. It's not just an action film. It is.
Yeah. Don't worry. We'll be talking about John Wick plenty next episode, but I think John Wick took what Taken did and just did it 100 times better. So
exactly. And we will definitely be talking about John Wick next episode. Yeah. But Taken was just the one there that I was just like, you sons of bitches. You started something. You don't know what you started. God damn you. God damn you all.
What have you done? Was your last one? My last one is action. It's a different kind of action. It's also a family film. It's a lot of car action. This is Speed Racer. Speed Racer.
Oh, no, this is overrated. Okay, never mind. I thought you were doing underrated. I was like, you son of a bitch.
Fuck, do you not know me at all? Do we need to?
I was like, we watched this for Cinemasochism. It's like,
yeah,
or not Cinemasochism. It was Force Movie.
One of the worst shows, or one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
It is so fucking bad.
I had seen the cartoon as a kid, and then they find out they're going to make a movie. I'm like, okay, they can make it exciting for it's fine for kids, especially. It's just a cool car racing and stuff.
You got the Wachowskis for it.
The Wachowskis, but the problem is, you made a movie that wasn't for anyone because it was too weird and out there, and some adult, well, not like hardcore adult, but like a lot of conversations and adult themes and things that kids aren't going to care about. And yet it's too, look at the pretty colors, look at the really shitty special effects, look at the weird style and the lowbrow comedy that you put in there to appeal to the little kids. And you have a movie that doesn't appeal to anyone. And I think the Wachowskis, people thought, oh, well, let's see what they can do with this world. And it looks ugly. It looks like everything that's wrong with the 2000 CGI, where they tried to basically create entire movies except for like your main cast, and everything's basically CGI, and it doesn't look good. It looks like they're all standing in front of screens because they are.
It's not even that it looks ugly. Every time I think of Speed Racer, I immediately get a headache because of the color palette.
Yes,
it's so over the top, like colors. It's like this is Spinal Tap. Well, this goes to 11. Yeah, but you only need 10. But this one goes to 11. Speed Racer goes to fucking 100 on the color palette. And every time I watch it, I feel like I'm not going to say what he actually is, but the main bad guy in Raiders, when he opens the Ark, Lost Ark. Yeah, he opens the Ark and his eyes just start bleeding out of his fucking skull because the color palette is so over the top neon saturated that I'm watching. I'm like, I don't get sick watching movies. I don't get nauseous. I don't get like messed up, but it is so overly done that I'm like, I need to close my eyes.
That's everything about the movie. I mean, the color palette and the editing of it, everything's like in your face. The acting is because they wanted to copy that kind of over enthusiastic style of the cartoon, which the cartoon wasn't good. Okay, let's just say that right up front. It wasn't good, so it was bad source material too. And then the characters in this are just awful. I don't really like. I mean, even the people in the cast. there are people in the cast who I like in some things, whether it's John Goodman, Susan Sarandon, Emil Hirsch, whoever.
Christina
But
Ricci.
here, yeah, her less. There's a time when I liked her, and then I realized I don't like her in most things. But I didn't like any character in this movie. I didn't like any plot of this movie. I didn't like anything visually about this movie. There was zero about this movie that I thought worked. And it's weird to have Speed Racer as my number one overrated action film of this whole decade, but it definitely is action. Now, is action aimed at kids? In theory, I guess, but it definitely for me was just so egregiously bad. I had to make it my number one.
I've never wanted to punch a kid in the face more than I think it's Polly Litt who plays Spritle.
Oh, that kid, yeah.
Oh my god, I've never wanted to cause bodily harm to a kid watching a movie before. That is one of the most egregiously annoying fucking characters. And I don't know, and it effectively, I feel like it effectively killed his career, because I don't think I really ever saw him in anything ever again after that. Or maybe he just, stepped away to do stuff. Because even if you look at his IMDb, he's older now in his pictures, so maybe he still does acting, but I never saw him in anything ever again after that, thank God. But it is one of the worst written, most cringeworthily annoying characters in a movie that I recall ever seeing, that is not intended to be that way. Every time that my rage level just boils every time that kid was on screen, because of how they wrote that character and how they just did the shit with him. The rest of the cast, I mean, I think they're for the most part bought in on the script, but it's just not a good script. But in the actions, like the race scenes had potential to be good, but they just felt like CGI blobs thrown onto a screen.
Well, that's the thing, at the time, because like I actually, what year did this come out? 2008. So I guess he wasn't old enough time. Actually, my son wasn't even born yet at the time. But this is the kind of film that I would think would appeal to people like my son when he was little. Like he played with Hot Wheels cars and stuff. You're gonna put him in this world where these cars can jump and turn in rockets and whatever.
Yeah.
And it's colorful and it's obviously gonna appeal to kids. And even he watched this movie and was like, "What is this?" And
I remember we went back and I want to say this was for Weekend or Weekly Crusaders, and this was picked for worst. I forgot what we called it. What's that?
Sneaker of the week.
Yeah, Sneaker of the week. But we had to go back and watch it. I think you and I both watched it together. So I was like, look, if we're gonna do this, we're just gonna watch this together. And I swear you and I both were just watching, going, "Oh my god, I fucking hate this so goddamn much." And I was like, maybe what if we were just really harsh on it, and maybe it's not that bad. And I think after 15 minutes, I was like, no, we just really fucking hate this movie.
Yeah, and it's a movie.
It went on forever.
You're just old, and this isn't made for you. This is made for kids. Like, yeah, that's great. Except you start asking people like who are at least your age, if not my age, but or in the kind of online movie community, and so many of them praise it, and I'm just like, no, just
no. It's horrible, and it was a long ass movie too, or at least it felt long. I can't remember how long it is, but I think it's over 2 hours.
It feels about 5 hours long, but yeah. Can we move on to good movies now? Yes,
let's go to our underrated.
It is 2 hours and 15 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, wait, it need to cut like 45 minutes off that fucking runtime. Yeah. All right, so underrated. Do you have any honorable mentions or no?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
It's one I've talked about on this channel a lot. I'm gonna put it as an honorable mention because is it a good movie? No. But it's a fun fucking movie to watch, and that's Torque. Yes, I said it. Torque. Which is Fast and the Furious on motorcycles.
I think this was on our second ever episode of Weekend Crusaders. I was like, I remember you picked this. I was like, really? Fucking Torque?
But it's total cheese. But here's the difference between this and most movies. This movie knows what it is. This movie, it just revels in it. It's just having fun, being cheesy. Even the actors, you can tell they're saying their lines with kind of this wink and a nod. They know the movie they're in. And so it's like, a movie can be good. Well, I won't say good. A movie can be fun if, everybody's on the same page. We talk about how sometimes this actor's in a different movie than everybody else kind of thing. Or even like in Fast X, you have Jason Momoa. is not in the same movie as everybody else. And I think that hurts it. If the rest of the movie was the same tone,
I think it was for the better, personally. But yeah,
no, but don't you think that if the rest of the movie was in the same tone as him, it would have worked better?
No, because if everyone else was doing what Momoa did, then we're like, what the fuck is this? I think Momoa continue with Torque.
Everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows the movie they're in. It's just cheesy, fun, and I ate it up, and I enjoy the hell out of this movie. And I've called it a like guilty pleasure for the longest time because I will admit it is not what I would call a good movie objectively, but I have fun with it, which is why it only made my honorable mentions because I can't say it's good.
Torque is a movie that is very much of the early 2000s that I like to call the MTV era of action. This is where you have like your triple X's, and you also got like Fast and the Furious works, so let's make all these other movies that are just like Fast and the Furious. Like, where we got the one TV show that we love, Fastlane. That was part of that generation. Like, we're gonna have hip hop music and the music that's very prevalent to the young ages. We're gonna have sexy women, fast cars, everything like that.
I think this feels very, very similar to Fastlane.
Oh, it's 1,000%. Except that they're not cops. But there was just like this 3 to 4 year pocket where they were just shoveling these movies out. Once again, Fast and Furious did, but basically Point Break was what Fast and Furious was, and it fucking launched a thing, and then everyone's like, let's be the next Fast and Furious, let's do this. And then they threw MTV into it because MTV was kind of at the height of its, not necessarily music, but like generation of like teenagers, and they kind of had this little pocket of these kind of films, and Torque was in the middle of that. It's definitely of its time. It's not a bad movie. It's not a good movie. It's not a bad movie though. I consider it like popcorn filler. It's not a popcorn film, but it's a movie that you can watch and after it'd be like, oh, it wasn't bad. I would never watch it again, but it wasn't bad. It's kind of like what we would probably say with much of the, like, not all of them, but most like Netflix streaming movies now, except they aren't egregiously overbloated in a budget that's like over 200 million. But it's something that would probably come on like Netflix and be like, hey, you want to check this out? Yeah, it was fine. I probably will never watch it again, but I mean, I didn't hate it. It's what it was. And back then, though, it was all getting released in theaters, so you had to deal with it. Where now that would be 1,000% a streaming film. It would be on like Peacock or Paramount Plus or something like that. Probably wouldn't even make Netflix. But yeah, it's fine for what it is. I remember because I watched it in theaters. And I was just like, okay. And I didn't think about it ever again until like we started our show and you brought it back up. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think I have thought 1 second about this film since I last saw it in like 2002? Is it 2?
I don't even know.
It's early 2000s. But yeah, I'm not surprised that you threw Torque in there. It's like me with the Guyver last episode. It's like no one thinks about the Guyver, but I'm gonna talk about that motherfucker. 2004. Okay. But yeah, so my first one is probably the one that is not underrated. I think this is very loved by a lot of people. I think it's loved not for the action of it though. I think the action's appreciated, but it's loved because of the comedy. Because this is definitely comedy action, not action comedy, which you and I had distinguished in the last episode. But it's one of those that I feel like the action is appreciated but slept on and is not fully appreciated for what really it is, and that's Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz obviously is a buddy cop comedy action film with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. I mean, you have Shaun of the Dead, which even though that's a comedy zombie film, it is one of the better horror films in the early 2000s. And then they did Hot Fuzz. And yes, it's about a strict, anal retentive cop and Simon Pegg. And then you have like the goofy, like kind of Gilligan cop and Nick Frost. And it works really well. And then in the third act, it fucking goes off the rails and becomes a insane action movie where it's those two, and well, they do have some help, but it's those two against the entire fucking town, and it is just fighting and bullets and explosions, and it goes from like on like a 2, like the whole movie, with the occasional like you have like that murder in front of the church, who was like, what the fuck, and then it goes back down to like a 2, and then you get to the third act, and then it's like a fucking 10 the whole rest of the way. And I feel like when people think of Hot Fuzz, they just look at, oh, it's a cop comedy with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. And it's like, no, it's a fucking awesome action film for the last like 20 minutes. And I don't think people pay attention to it enough. You and I do, but I feel like most people don't pay attention to Hot Fuzz the way they should.
I think that most people who have seen Hot Fuzz love Hot Fuzz. I do think that it kind of lives in the shadow of Shaun of the Dead, which we'll talk so much about that one, and this one doesn't get talked about as much. And rightfully so. Shaun of the Dead's a great film.
Shaun of the Dead's perfect.
But I think that people look at, okay, they kind of did a parody of zombie movies, and this is a parody of action movies, and they kind of wrote it off as, okay, this is their next thing. But it is a great film on its own right. It does kind of walk that line of it's a comedy that's some action, but like you said, that entire kind of second, not quite the second half, but it definitely cranks it up to where it absolutely qualifies as an action movie first.
Yeah, third act wise, totally just all, and I love it immensely. And it's one of those that's like I had to grow to love it. So I remember the first time I watched it, I was just expecting like Shaun of the Dead, and it wasn't hitting for me. And I heard everyone was like, Hot Fuzz. I'm like, it's okay. And then like I had to like get away from the aura of it, like let it pass. And then I watched it kind of like Tropic Thunder. Like I hated Tropic Thunder when it first came out because I thought it severely underperformed my expectations. Then I watched it like 6 months later, and now it's one of my faves. But like that was what with Shaun of the Dead. It's like I kind of had to wait for it to pass and then watch it, and now I fucking just love Hot Fuzz for what it is. What's your next one?
My next one, I do want to give a shout out. I'm going to cheat. I almost picked Way of the Gun for this, but I didn't because I love that movie. Not enough people have seen it, but I think there's not enough action in it. I think it's a crime movie that has like a great action, especially at the end, but I did not include that for that reason. So instead, I went with another one. Now, this one is far more popular. This is not a movie people haven't heard of or seen, but I think it is underrated because I think people think it's a bad one, and I don't. And that is Live Free or Die Hard. Live Free or Die Hard, I think, is the most underrated of the series because it was the last Die Hard film that we will acknowledge exists. I think 1, 2, and 3. Well, 1 obviously is loved. 3 is loved by a lot of people. 2, I think, is not bad, but people just kind of thought, okay, it's a fine, just immediate cash-in sequel to the first one. Yeah. But I think 4 is the one where people are like, oh, they never should have come back and made this one. 4 and 5 are awful. It's like, don't you fucking dare lump 4 in with a movie that doesn't exist. Because 4, while it is not the level of 1, honestly, I depend on the day. I'd start up there with 3 for me, most because the ending of 3 kind of got weak. But I love Justin Long in this movie. I think his chemistry with Bruce Willis is good. I think Bruce Willis actually seemed for most of the movie like he actually cared again, which he hadn't done for many years at this point, and for many years after this. I think that the action sequences are well shot. I think it's suspense. You got Timothy Olyphant.
I was gonna say you're forgetting like my favorite part of the movie, which is Timothy Olyphant
playing a fun villain. You got Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Entirely Lucy. Now, granted, she has a relatively small role, but still love seeing her.
Love her. Yeah.
So there's so many things about this movie that worked for me. I'm not going to, it's nowhere near the first film. The first film for me, obviously, with me, it's a perfect film for me. Nothing's ever going to live up to that one. But I think that this is one that was a worthy sequel. But one that people do say, oh, they should have done 4 and 5. It's like, those 5 is so much worse than 4. 4, I actually think, is a good movie.
And this is the last time we'll be talking about Die Hard in this, because we will never be bringing up Die Hard ever again. Die Hard has been talked about on every episode. It will not be talked about ever again after this. In the decades of action. We'll probably talk about Die Hard again down the road, but definitely on this series, we will never be talking about it again. I enjoy the hell out of Live Free and Die Hard. I think where most of the people get butthurt about it, and you agree with this, so this isn't like I'm saying something you don't disagree with, is the whole great thing about John McClane is that he's the everyman, and he's fallible. He can fuck up. He can get hurt. He can, be beatable in a lot of things. And I think Live Free or Die Hard, McClane turns into Rambo, or most of the Schwarzenegger films, where he can do so many things that really he should have died like 8 times in the movie.
And I was okay with most of them. You had the thing in the tunnel, a little unbelievable, but fine. You had that thing with the
airplane,
the elevator shaft or whatever it was. That's fine. But once he got on that plane, I'm like,
The airplane is
not
very
John
unbelievable.
this is not John McClane. This is True Lies.
Yeah, this is 1,000% Schwarzenegger Stallone, which once again, I'm not mad at because I love Bruce Willis and it's fine, but it does take you.
Really acknowledge this is part of the problem with 2000s. Is the 2000s is where they started saying, well, let's start making our action movies all PG-13 so we can get more audience in and come see it. So they took Die Hard, a movie that's been R all along, and said, well, we'll make that one PG-13. And granted, I don't think it hurt the movie necessarily, because I'm not the kind of person, oh, you have to show blood and you have to show tits and you have to say the F word for a movie to be good. I think they made a good movie without that stuff. But I think that if they just, took off those handcuffs and let it be itself, it would have been, I think, even more enjoyable. And now, they released the unrated cut on DVD and video, but actually that all they did was dub in some swear words and CGI in some blood splatter. And it's like, no, you didn't make it any better. You didn't.
Yeah, because I mean, I think the one thing everyone was angry about initially when PG-13 came out, because this is before that you were allowed to say one fuck in a PG-13 movie, was that, well, how the fuck's John McClane gonna say yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker? Like, if it's PG-13,
it was so dumb too.
And the way they covered it is that he says fucker right when he pulls the gun, so that it drowns out. I was like, okay, like that, at least you found a way to have him say it without actually saying it. So okay, fine. But yeah, no, Live Free or Die Hard, I will watch that anytime. Same thing with Vengeance and the first Die Hard. I, like I said, and 2 and the other shall not be named that I don't think I ever made past 20 minutes into because I hated it so much. I will always watch Live Free or Die Hard. Because it's got a cast that I love with Long and Oliphant and Winstead, and then like I said, Bruce Willis just fully like embracing the new version of McClane. Love it or hate it, he's embraced it, but he's not like, I'm just doing this for a fucking paycheck. I felt like Bruce really was like, look, I do love this character and I'm going to protect this character, until the one that we don't talk about came through. It's like, no, he don't give a shit no more. Like this isn't Bruce Willis anymore. But yeah, Live Free or Die Hard, I think is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, as long as you're not trying to hold it up to a candle to the original. It's a fun film. My next one is one that I feel like came out in the midst of everything, and a lot of people forgot about. And we were just talking about this actor. I was watching Cleaner with Daisy Ridley. And as I was watching it, Brian messaged me like halfway through, and I was like, I swear to God, man, like, did they just kill off this actor like in the first 40 minutes? You're like, well, he wasn't an important focal point. Plus, I don't really care. I don't think people really care about Cleaner.
Nobody cares.
Which is it's not bad, guys. But I was like, well, it was important to me because I love this actor, and he's not in enough things anymore.
Damn it.
But this was at the height of him, and that is Shoot 'Em Up with Clive Owen. Shoot 'Em Up is, I feel like, the most live action Looney Tunes action film without having any cartoons. Even with him, Clive Owens is totally playing Bugs Bunny action star, and Giamatti is totally like Elmer Fudd or Yosemite Sam, whichever one you want to do. And the whole movie is basically Clive Owen trying to protect this baby who loves chewing on a carrot and just shooting the fucking place up. And Paul Giamatti keeps getting foiled over and over and over again. It is stupid, but it is fun as hell. And I love this movie unabashedly. I will defend this movie. I get that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I remember in the 2000s, I thought Clive Owen was going to be like the next biggest star. And I felt like he was on track for it. I mean, with Sin City, Children of Man, Closer, all this stuff. Like I felt like he was moving in the right direction, and then he just kind of disappeared for some reason. I don't know why. And now he'll just pop up like randomly. I still think he's got probably one of the best heist movies in the 2000s with Inside Man. I thought he was phenomenal in that as well. But I love him in this movie. I think Giamatti. I love how he can chew a scenery in a movie when they allow him to, when he's not trying to be serious. And this movie, I think, is just a ton of fun. It's just a ton of fun.
Yeah, this is the live action Looney Tunes. They clearly were really going for a certain tone, and while it didn't entirely work for me, I think it's just kind of thing where by the time you get to the end of the movie, it was kind of like it got
You
to
were
be a little
over
bit
it?
much. But I still enjoyed the hell out of it. It just didn't make the top of my list. I will just say I was just looking it up, and what I did not realize until just now, same guy directed this, did 100 Girls. It's a weird
This is
filmography.
another movie that you and I unabashedly like defend as a really good movie
That's
that
a
most
weird
people never
filmography,
saw.
Yeah.
Yes. What's your next one?
Next on my list, which one did I go with? Next on my list, I have a movie it's again, this isn't really like all out action. It's kind of a crime, almost a little bit of sci-fi to it, but there are some cool action sequences in it, so I included it, and that's Denzel Washington's Deja Vu. It's a Tony Scott film. Y'all know I love Tony Scott, the better Scott brother. The wrong kid died.
Damn.
Say it every time. But no, it's a kind of a sci-fi action thriller. It's got Denzel Washington, Jim Caviezel is the, I guess, villain you call it. Val Kilmer is in there in one of his last kind of big roles before he started, tapering off when he started getting ill. I just think it's a super like imaginative movie to it. There's one scene in it. There's like a car chase because basically they have like this thing where they can see a certain number of days, like whatever 3 days and however many hours into the past exact moment that moves along with current day. So they're basically doing a car chase where a guy's wearing a headset, so he's driving in current day traffic, but he's actually chasing somebody from 3 days ago, trying to follow them where they went. And it's just the way it is done. It's so unique and so imaginative. I thought that was well done. The action is really cool. But it's a movie that nobody talks about. I think some people have seen. I don't think it's as popular as most of Denzel's films, but it's just one of those things that's underseen. But I love the Tony Scott style. I love Denzel's obviously gold in pretty much anything he does. The whole supporting cast across the board, and it's just something different, and it's something more people should check out. Even though, like I will admit, it's not a full-out action movie, but
I don't know if I've seen it.
You should.
I don't. It's one of those. It's like I was like, I definitely have not seen that movie, and then I go and check Letterboxd, and it was like a 3-star film. I don't remember if I have seen it.
Which your mistake is, you just need to come check my Letterboxd because my opinions are correct.
Sure. Movie 43. Don't laugh at him. Kim was over here laughing.
43. Most of those segments are fucking hilarious. It's just the little story that strings them together. Who gives a shit about that? That sucks. But the individual segments of that movie are hilarious. Anyway.
Yeah, if I did watch it, I don't remember it because there was that time when, like I said, and it's not that they were bad movies. Denzel went on this streak of like he was just pumping out movies, but none of them really did much for me, and it was just, and I feel like Deja Vu was kind of in that same like grouping, so I really can't say anything about this because either I haven't seen it or I don't fucking remember it. I remember you say Deja Vu, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I don't. If you ask me to point out like that car chasing, that sounds really cool. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it's very hard to describe. I think check it out. I think you'll enjoy it, but it's definitely a movie you can't put on the background. You got to pay attention or you're gonna.
Yeah, I remember being so, and this was kind of in the same realm. I remember being so excited for, I think it was, what was it, Safe House, with him and like Ryan Reynolds, and I remember just not liking it at all. And then he also did oh god, I think we did watch this for the show. It was the one with him and Wahlberg. Was it 2 days? Not 2 days.
Two Guns.
Two Guns.
I actually enjoyed that.
Which I think, I was like, I didn't hate that one.
Like, and I think it was more, some of the
and he had the Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, which I was like, It was like you said, he had this like pocket in the 2000s where I just really wasn't buying into Denzel, even though I love Denzel. But okay, was that your last one, or do you have one more?
I have one more.
Okay, so this is my last one for underrated. This is a movie that I know we both like. I pretty sure I love it a lot more than you do, but I do know that you're at least fine with the film, if not like it. We talked about him in the early 90s, or not early 90s. We talked about him in the 90s as being the kind of breakthrough of the late 90s, and that's Michael Bay. Now, Michael Bay has done some real fucking stinkers, and we will not defend him on those films. But there are some that he actually that hit on all the cylinders, but some people didn't pay attention to. Why? Because he was too busy doing Transformers. and it was just Transformers for the next decade of that crap. But before Transformers, or this might have been right around Transformers, he did come out with one film, and I feel like I know Brian's seen it, but I feel like so many people have not seen this fucking movie, and it's one of my favorite Michael Bay's, and that's The Island. I love this movie. Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson, Djimon Hounsou, Sean Bean, fucking great cast. Michael Bay, I thought, had a really great story here. I think the action's good. Yes, it has all the Michael Bay-isms that we all know and love or hate, depending on how you feel about Michael Bay. I think Scarlett Johansson is the hottest she ever was in this movie. Like, I don't know why, but she just is fucking breathtaking in this movie for me. I love Ewan McGregor in this film. I always love Ewan McGregor, but I love him in this movie. Steve Buscemi's got a small part in the film. I think he's great in it as well. Basically, it's these people on this island, and they're all lied to and told that they're basically the last surviving member or people on the planet after like this virus outbreak thing killed the whole world. What they don't realize is that they're actually clones of rich people who basically are saving up these clone versions of themselves, so that way if they need like heart replacement or spare parts, basically, then they will basically kill this clone and take those parts.
Or the women who want to have a kid but don't want to carry it themselves. Yeah,
exactly. They'll have them carry the baby, and then they'll kill their version of the mother once the baby's released because they don't want to bear the child themselves. So these are basically just kind of replacement parts. And Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson kind of figure that out, and they break out, and then they basically find their real selves for the most part, and then they're being hunted because if they get found out, then this is like a hidden like company organization. Like rich people know about it, but the real world doesn't. And if they come out saying, they're harvesting people and all this bullshit, then it blows it wide open. So it's a whole big chase and conspiracy kind of thing. Like I said, I love this movie. I think it looks great. I think when they do Michael Bay action, it's incredibly well done. There's like this highway chase scene, which he's so good at doing highway chase scenes. And I'm going to talk about him again later for another kind of scene like that. But I really, really enjoy The Island. I feel like not enough people watched this movie. And if they did, they forgot about it. And I will always be on an island defending The Island.
I like that. We've talked about this movie before, so I don't go into it a whole lot. But I agree, it is one of the Michael Bay's underseen, underrated action films, and kind of a breath of fresh air in the middle of that Transformers run. So
yeah. What's your last one?
My last one for underrated is a movie from 2004 called Cellular.
Which I didn't watch until I think a couple years back because I think we had to watch it for the show.
I really enjoy this movie. It's kind of like Phone Booth and some of those kind of movies where somebody's like caught on the phone, and so it's essentially told in real time. Not exactly, but told in real time. But this one, if you haven't seen it, Kim Basinger basically has been kidnapped. She gets this phone that's on the wall to work. But she can only get to call a random number. It happens to call Chris Evans' cell phone, and she's trying to get him to help to not only help find out where she is so they can save her, but also to save her son because the bad guy's going to kidnap her son. And so it becomes this whole action thriller where you're racing against time, you're racing against, in case she loses connection to the phone, keeps talking to her. There's a whole a surprisingly tense scene about trying to get a phone charger in the store.
I was like, the one scene that was popping in my brain was this kind
of a movie. It's like, it's got like, that first 5-10 minutes to set up, and then it just kind of takes off, and it's just like, foot on the pedal for the rest of the film, essentially. This is also, I think, the movie that kind of opened the door for Chris Evans, because before this he'd been in like Not Another Teen Movie and Perfect Score, but he did this movie, and people can see him as like doing action, and I think this is the reason they cast him in like Fantastic Four, and like Push and Losers, and then eventually into the MCU, of course, with Captain America. So I think this is kind of that first movie that kind of showed us he wasn't just a comedic actor, that he could do action and stuff, and did plenty of comedy in this too. It's a surprisingly funny movie. Great small parts by Eric Christian Olsen, who I honestly love in anything that guy does.
I think he's great.
Jessica Biel's got a small role in it, but basically it's Kim Basinger, it's Chris Evans, and then Jason Statham in a villainous role. And this is a movie that I think people, if they've seen it, I think just tend to just write it off as like this little movie. But I think it's pretty impressive and it's fun. So
this is definitely one of those movies that at the time when it came out, it just seems like a run-of-the-mill horror or action film that they threw in theaters that maybe would make, 10, 12 mil in the box office. This is one of those movies that once Chris Evans blew up and you get someone who wants to be a Chris Evans fan, is like, hey, I want to go back and watch all of his stuff. That's when they find Cellular. And it's not something that I think a lot of people watched when it came out. It was people who had to come back to it and find it down the road. That was one of them for me too. Is like when it came out, Chris Evans was not another teen movie. I think not another teen movie is okay. I don't think it's great. I liked him in it, but it wasn't enough at that point for me to start following his career. It wasn't until Fantastic Four and stuff like that where I was like, oh, okay, Chris Evans. And then I started paying attention to him from then on. And I had always heard of Cellular, but it never was enough for me to want to go back and watch it. And then you would praise it, and I think we had to watch it for Weekly Crusaders. And I was like, okay, well, I'm finally going to watch Cellular. And I watched, I was like, this is actually really solid. I was like, why did I not watch this before? It's like, oh, yeah, because at the time, Kim Basinger didn't sell me on anything. Statham was still, for the most part, unknown. And Eric Christian Olsen we liked, but he was also unknown at the time. And Jessica Biel, she was around, but she's in such a small part, she wouldn't even be on the cast list for the most part. So it was basically just Chris Evans. But like you said, it's fun. It's like right from, after like it's got 5-10 minutes to set the tone, and boom, you go. And I think it really was kind of like that standout thing for Evans. He's not going to get acknowledged for it to be his standout role, but it definitely was the building block, kind of like with Sandra Bullock in Demolition Man, where it was like people started to go, okay, and then Speed was
it solidified it. Yeah,
okay, yeah, and I feel like this was kind of like the okay moment for Chris Evans. Yeah. All right, going into our faves. I've got an honorable mentions group. Do you have one?
I do, and this isn't like a lot of times I'll make my honorable mention kind of, just like one that's maybe a little different, little offbeat, little underseen, whatever. No, this is just a matter of I had too many, so I just want a top 6 essentially. So,
okay.
Which one to give the bottom spot to? I guess I'll give my honorable mention to Black Hawk Down.
I so badly wanted to put this on my list. I fought so hard.
Well, good. Now you still get to talk about it.
Yes.
Because Black Hawk Down, the other Scott brother, Ridley Scott now, who does make good movies I like. I just prefer Tony Scott.
Especially in the 2000s. He was really good in the 2000s.
Yeah. So Black Hawk Down is just one of those war movies that there isn't a lot of plot to this movie. This movie has only a little bit more plot than like Mad Max Fury Road, which is just drive there, turn around, come back again, essentially. This movie is basically we're on this mission, Black Hawk crashes, we got to save the guys. That's your plot. So trying to save the guys and trying to get out of there alive. But as far as like war movies go, and ones that kind of put you in the on the ground, kind of knowing what it felt like, or at least getting some kind of inkling of a concept of what it was like for these guys to be in the situation of overwhelming odds, and the numbers aren't in your favor, and especially in the atmosphere like this where it's not an open battlefield. This is like urban warfare. You're going building to building. You don't know who's in any window on any roof, who's coming after you. You don't know which of the locals are trying to kill you and which ones are just trying to hide for their own lives. But I think this movie did a great job of capturing the chaos of that kind of situation. I think the war scenes very well done. I think Hans Zimmer's score is phenomenal in this. It uses a lot of weird, like, Middle Eastern instruments, but mixed with like, electric guitars and things. I just think the score, I mean, Hans Zimmer is a genius, obviously, but I think this is one of the best examples of how he uses like these different sounds and creates these scores. And it sounds so good. The cast though, in this movie, I remember before this movie came out, I'm looking at this cast. It's one of those movies you can go 30 names down. You're still.
I was just looking at the cast. I was like, you can go about 20 plus down, and you're still hitting people.
And it's amazing. I mean, you got the smallest roles in the movie are like Orlando Bloom, Ewan McGregor. All these. You're still hitting like big names down here.
And the height of Josh Hartnett's career.
and yeah, Josh Hartnett. You have Eric Bana probably at the height of his career. You have a whole bunch of names up top that are are more well known. And I think I love those kind of casts. So there's not really A-list stars in it. I've talked about this 1,000 times. So I love the kind of cast they put together here. They're actually doing it again, coming out in like a week or two. There's the movie Warfare.
I was going to say this is a lot like Warfare.
It feels very much to me like the next generation of Black Hawk Down, because you have a whole list of up and comers from Will Poulter to Joseph Quinn to I don't remember all the other people, but it's got a whole bunch of like up and coming names, kind of like this one did at the time in 2001. And yeah, this movie is super well done. The only reason it doesn't make my top 5 is because there's 5 movies that I love from this decade. So.
I remember when Black Hawk Down came out, I was still, granted it's 3 years later, but I was still running off of nothing is going to top Saving Private Ryan in terms of a war movie. Saving Private Ryan is the best war film ever made, and nothing's going to top that. So why? I feel like everyone's just trying to be the next Saving Private Ryan. And that's what I felt like with Black Hawk Down. That's what it was like. Oh yeah, cast a bunch of young up and comers that, you know, oh, I like that person, but I don't really need to go see their movies, kind of thing. And like, okay, yeah, they're just trying to, you know, be Saving Private Ryan. And then, like I said, I worked at the movie theater, and I was just one of those things. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'll go check this out. And just being in the theater going, fuck, and just, you know, now you watch it and you're like, man, why isn't this person not in it more? It's because back then they weren't that big of an actor. Like, why is Ewan McGregor got such a small role? But in Orlando Bloom, because I feel like even though Josh Hartnett was the star, this Orlando Bloom was probably, and Ewan McGregor were probably the 2 people that were being paid attention to most because of Star Wars and Pirates.
Well, when this came out, Pirates didn't exist yet, and Lord of the Rings, the first one, actually, no, Lord of the Rings hasn't started yet. That was going to start that same year.
So, I thought this was after Pirates.
No, Pirates was 2003 was the first one.
Oh, no, wow, I always thought it was Pirates as well. But I mean, definitely Ewan McGregor, you know, because of Obi-Wan. But it was one of those, it's like, you are thrown in the mix of this, much like with Private Ryan. Most war movies do a good job of it, but this one, the way they shot it, like I said, Hans Zimmer's score and this cast, and just oh god, I'm blanking on the word. It's such an easy word.
I don't know where you're going with
it. You're so tight, and there's like no space.
Oh, claustrophobic?
Thank you, claustrophobic. It's like it's a fucking C word, my concussion brain. The claustrophobicness of it, because like you said, at any point, at any room, any window, someone's going to shoot at them, and they don't know which room, which window. They're the most unsafe they could possibly be. Luckily, they've got weapons, but they only got so much fucking ammo. And that's the problem, is that like all these places have unlimited ammo, what it felt like, and they have like RPGs and all this shit. And these guys, they've got like maybe 4 mags, and they got to be extra careful with their shots. They just can't, you know, spray and pray, and they got to just like try to survive, you know.
Not everybody in town is a villain. Some people are just people who live there, are stuck in the middle of this like they are. So they want to murder everyone.
But you can't trust them, because at any moment they can just pull a gun out from their pillow and shoot them in the back of the head. And another movie that did this really fucking well, even though they weren't trying to run. I mean, they were, but they were for the most part at a base, which was, you know, in the next decade with Michael Bay, was 13 Hours with the Benghazi film, which was also done incredibly well. And Black Hawk Down, I thought, was beautifully shot. There's another war movie that I also would acknowledge, which is Tears of the Sun with Bruce Willis, which also came out around this time. But it's no Black Hawk Down.
Black Hawk Down, I thought it was interesting you talked about at the time, you thought, oh, it's just trying to be Saving Private Ryan. That's pretty much what everybody thought about this thing going in, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that it makes a great companion piece to Saving Private Ryan, because yes, they're both war films with these young ensemble casts, but I think it just shows how much different war is. It's like not only in the fact that you're in this urban warfare as opposed to like these open battlefields and the beaches and things like that, but I think also just in the fact that like nowadays it's far more tactical. And whereas in World War II, it was like, just throw as many soldiers on so we can finally break through. You know, it's basically huge cannon fodder. And I think that they kind of show like how warfare has changed, which is things are better and things about it that are far worse. But I think they did a great job of while those were definitely expectations, I think that they managed to escape the shadow of Private Ryan.
The thing I think that Black Hawk Down does well, that's very much like Saving Private Ryan, is, like I said, the first scene of Saving Private Ryan is iconic. It's, you know, Omaha Beach, and you're just watching mass casualties galore and the gore. You're living in that moment. But the other phenomenal part of Saving Private Ryan is once we've lived in with these people and we've been with them for 2 hours, is that final battle in the town, and you now care about every single one of these soldiers because you have now been with these soldiers. That final act, Saving Private Ryan, that's all Black Hawk Down. You're not getting, like you said, endless waves of soldiers like, oh, that one got shot in the head. Okay. Ooh, that was brutal, but I don't know who that person is. Okay. By the time we get to the third act, Saving Private Ryan, you cared when Adam Goldberg's character, which is still probably one of the most horrifically kills when he gets stabbed. No, like that scene still is just like that. That scene will never leave my brain. That was one of the most brutal scenes. But you cared when he died. You're like, oh man, fuck, and all this stuff. Black Hawk Down, they get very, very little time to get you to care about these people. So you kind of have to rely more on the actor because, like, oh, I don't want Ewan McGregor and Orlando Bloom and all these people to die because I love these characters. But you live on the stride of these actors playing these roles. But then as the movie goes, you care more and more and more. And when they die, you're like, fuck. Because that whole movie is that third act of Saving Private Ryan. And it's done fantastically. And I was going through my list right before we started, and I saw Black Hawk Down. I was like, I so badly want to put this on there, but I got to keep it to 6 technically. And I was like, I got to put these other 6 here. And granted, you could argue at least half my list, you could put Black Hawk Down in there over these. But like I said, it's my list, not yours. But I'm glad that Brian at least brought it up so we could talk about it.
What is your 6?
You know what? My 6 was going to be this other thing, but since you already brought it up, I'll just get it out of the way. I didn't combine them into one film. I did it as the volumes, and that's Kill Bill Volume 1. I am one of those people who love Kill Bill. It's not my favorite Tarantino film. It's not my second favorite Tarantino film. It is my third, though.
Let me be clear. The worst Tarantino film is still better than 90% of the films out there.
Exactly.
I still enjoy Kill Bill. Let me make that clear. I still enjoy Kill Bill.
Yes, and I still haven't seen Jackie Brown. I always keep saying, like, I'm going to watch Jackie Brown, and then I still haven't watched it. But I love Kill Bill Volume 1. I like Kill Bill Volume 2. But Kill Bill Volume 1, I think I think Volume 2 is the drama film, and Volume 1 is the action film. And I think that's why most people enjoy 1 over 2. Now, I would love to watch them all. I would love if he ever released The Whole Bloody Affair, and I could watch it all as one thing. Because granted, if you watch 1, you have to immediately watch 2. But I would love to just watch it flow together. Then like, oh, end of movie, let's put the next one in. The Crazy 88 scene is. I fucking love that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes of the 2000s. I love the build up to it and the music. Like, I know I just did the song wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. I love how it like builds up to boss, and then it's here's 88 people, and she just murks them all, and then back to a boss fight. I love the opening scene with her and Vivica A. Fox. I enjoy her fight scene in the trailer with Daryl Hannah. I love the style that they shoot this film in. I love that. Like I said, Tarantino being Tarantino. Hey, let's go anime for the next like 10 minutes. Like I said, I don't necessarily love the scene, but I love that he just decided to take the choice to just fucking do that. It's like only Tarantino could just go, fuck you guys, I'm going anime for 10 minutes. You're like, okay, it's not my bag because I'm not a big anime guy, but I love that you at least said fuck you, I'm doing it. I think Uma Thurman is great in the film. I think everyone does a great job in the movie. I love that it still randomly has funny moments in it. I still love when she's murdering all the crazy 88s, and then she the lights turn on, she's about to kill this little one, and she stops. She basically spanks him on the ass with her katana and says, go home to your mother. And he's running down the stairs crying, grabbing his ass. I love that scene. I think there's so many iconic moments of this movie that is right there with peak Quentin Tarantino. I get that Brian's not a huge fan of it, but I love Kill Bill Volume 1. But yes. And he already said his piece, so he doesn't say anything else about it. So continue on to the next one.
At number 5, they're not really ranked, but the next one I'll talk about. Also Ridley Scott, Gladiator. This is a movie I didn't know what to expect from coming out in 2000. It's a movie at Gladiators, which you hadn't really seen for 20 years before that, at least. Russell Crowe, he had been in some movies, but I think this was his first kind of big lead. Well, I don't know. He'd done like Insider before this, I guess. But
before this, I knew Russell Crowe as the crazy serial killer in Virtuosity with Denzel Washington.
Yeah,
That's what I knew Russell Crowe.
His big breakthrough obviously was in 1997 with LA Confidential. Was kind of the big breakthrough, but then he did a couple other movies, and then this was like him starring in this movie. It's an action drama, historical epic kind of thing. Ridley Scott again and again using Hans Zimmer, great score, great visual filmmaking. I think that Russell Crowe does a great job in the role. Who I don't know why they didn't take out of the script that he was a Spaniard, because there's nothing in the story.
He's Irish, motherfucker. He's not even Irish. He's
really not Spanish.
He's
There's nothing in the story that relies on his character being a Spaniard. So they could have just made him some other dude. I don't understand that. But other than that, that nitpick.
I love that they tried to give him a tan.
It's pretty damn perfect, from the story, the acting, top to bottom, perfect, editing, perfect, music, perfect, visuals, perfect. What I didn't expect this movie when it came out was it was going to be Academy Award nominee, much less winner of like so many awards, and it deserved it. Now, granted, 2000 was a weak year for movies, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but Gladiator was a great film. It was a great film just overall, and as an action film, it definitely made my top 5.
Another one like Black Hawk Down that I was like, I hope Brian talks about this because it's not going to make my top list. Gladiator is one of my favorite films, especially of the 2000s. But once again, I was looking at like action scenes, and while the action scenes are great, I picked other things because of the action aspect of it. Everything that Brian said, 100% true. This movie made Joaquin Phoenix. I don't think Joaquin Phoenix would have had
better
the career
work.
that he had.
This is the last time I liked Joaquin Phoenix. So.
I think he's fantastic. Obviously, Russell Crowe's amazingness. Jaimin Hansu again being talked about in this. I don't think I'm talking about him again through the rest of this. And so I think that's it for Jaimin. One of the most criminally underrated actors in Hollywood. That dude deserves way fucking more. He should have the career that Liam Neeson or Statham or Keanu should have. Like, he should have. Why has he not had a standalone action film, Jaimin? I don't get it. He has everything that you need. He has all the traits that you would want as a movie star, and no one wants to cast this guy in his own movie. But the whole everything about Gladiator is near perfection. And I remember rewatching it last year before Gladiator 2 came out, and just going like, this movie is just it's so fucking amazing. I love this movie so goddamn much. And then Gladiator 2 came out and shat all over it. But it doesn't take away how amazing Gladiator is. Just don't watch Gladiator 2 because it's fucking horseshit. My next one was going to be my honorable mention, but I went ahead and knocked it out just because you brought up Kill Bill already. About 15 minutes before we shot this, I threw this in and took something else out. I was going to have The Patriot in here because I fucking love The Patriot so goddamn much. But then I was like, I could talk about The Patriot or I could talk about these. I gotta talk about these. I love The Patriot with Mel Gibson and Heath Ledger and Jason Isaacs. I think is one of the best villains of the 2000s. But I gotta say no, because there's a trilogy that happened in the 2000s. Granted, the first film's the best one. The next two are fine, but they don't come up to the same caliber as the first one. But I talked about it briefly in the 90s, and it deserves to be talked about now. And that's the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. What did you think I was gonna say? Because you seem shocked by me talking about it.
I just didn't see this making your top 5. Go ahead.
Like I said, I love swashbuckling movies. I love good swordplay. What I also enjoy, even though I don't watch, it's not that I don't watch enough of them. It's like they really have to hit on all cylinders for me to really, really like them. I love space. Jesus. I love battleship, like ship battles with cannons and all that kind of stuff. So this has the sword fighting that I love. It's got the ship battles that I also really, really enjoy, because I love that concept of them needing to kind of outmaneuver the other person, and one wrong move, much like a lot of fights, can literally cause you to basically lose everything. Plus, I like when they swing over to the other ships and fight. I love the chaos of it all. But you got a phenomenal cast. I mean, Johnny Depp, re-revolutionized his career as Jack Sparrow. Orlando Bloom, riding high off of Lord of the Rings. Oh, wait, here's another fucking trilogy for Orlando Bloom. Keira Knightley, she's gorgeous, but we all knew her as like the Love Actually girl, and then she became Elizabeth Swann. Jeffrey Rush is great in this movie. Bill Nighy as Davy Jones in the sequels, he's great. I think this visually looks fucking amazing. I think everything, the music, the choreography. Hell, the very, very first fight scene with Orlando Bloom and Johnny Depp fighting in the Swordsman building. Thank you, Blacksmith Room. Everything, it's so fucking good. It's so simple, but it's not simple at the same time. I love that scene. Anytime they did granted by today's standards it doesn't look as good, but like at the time, the whole transferring from the skeletons to real life, I think looked great. I love the first film so much. Then you add the Kraken into the second film, and then at the third film, then you have 1,800 ships all fighting at the same time with the big it's not a cyclone.
Maelstrom.
Thank you. And then even in the second one, you have them when they're all fighting on the big fucking wheel. They did such a good job of choreography, with the action scenes in this. I think the trilogy as a whole is so memorable. And I say the trilogy because I think the last two after that are very, very, very undervalued. Or not undervalued. They don't compare to the OG trilogy. I think On Stranger Tides and is it Dead Man's Tales? Yeah, Dead Man's Tale. I don't think they're that good. I think that they're cash grabs. I know they're about to redo this all over again, and it's like, dude, come on, let this breathe a little bit. And I say that, but it's been 20 years since the first one, or 22 years since the first one. But I love the Pirates trilogy. Mainly, I love the first one. I really enjoyed the last two, but I really, really love the Pirates trilogy.
So Pirates was my number one.
Probably. Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'm gonna do the same cheat and say that whole original trilogy, basically the three that came out in the 2000s.
Yes.
I love these three movies to death. And if I had to pick a favorite, I actually might go with number two.
Really?
The first one, I it starts everything out and you're introduced to these characters and everything. But I think in terms of some of the story and some of the action sequences, I think are not as good as by the time they had two, they kind of hit their stride and everything became, more epic and you got more into the characters. And then, by the time you got three, it got even bigger, almost a little too bloated at times.
Yeah.
But I love the hell out of three. But yeah, let's go back to when the first one came out. This movie should have been a flop. It's Disney.
It had no business. Because
it was. It's a movie based on a ride at Disneyland.
And it's not even a good ride. It's better now.
A lot of us like Johnny Depp, but he's obviously kind of a weird, quirky guy. Even everything from Edward Scissorhands to whatever. And at the time he wasn't a star. He's kind of in probably a lull in his career before this movie hit.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, he's going to be a pirate, whatever. And you don't really know who these other people are. Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom. You might have seen them in something, but they weren't.
Well, you would have had all the you would have at least two of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, I guess, by the time this came out, yeah.
Yeah.
But so you go in with pretty low expectations. And then I saw this movie and just fucking loved it. Now, the obvious strongest thing about this movie is Johnny Depp, who, you didn't know how he was going to play a pirate. And then he played it. I guarantee you, no matter how anybody thought he was going to play it, it wasn't this.
No one expected what we got.
This kind of effeminate, almost like he's always drunk. He based a lot of it kind of on the Keith Richards kind of mannerisms, things like that. But he just created such a unique character, such a fun, iconic character. And I know we throw that word around a lot, but this is definitely one of those iconic characters that he created here. And it's so awesome. I loved everything about it. And then on top of that, you have the swashbuckling kind of action scenes to it that are so much fun that we hadn't seen a good pirate movie in decades at this point. You got Jerry Bruckheimer kind of behind the whole thing. You got The music, once again, Hans Zimmer. If you look at the score, it says Klaus Badelt, but it's actually Hans Zimmer created the scores and basically passed it off to one of his essentially assistant composers and said, okay, you go out and flesh it out and make the whole score out of it. And then, of course, in the films after that, Hans Zimmer just did it all himself because, oh, wait, this movie actually turned into a hit, so I want my name on it. But the themes, the music of this movie are awesome. The action's awesome. The characters are awesome. There's nothing about this movie I don't like. And like I said, 2, I love maybe more than the first one, although you got to give that first one respect for starting it off. But this whole original trilogy were 3 of my favorite films of the 2000s, action movies or of any genre. I think was the first kind of heir apparent to, a great, fun trilogy of films. I mean, there was this Star Wars, obviously the original trilogy, you kind of had that Han, Luke, and Leia thing, and you had this great perfect trilogy of films. And I don't think it's until you hit, Pirates of the Caribbean where you kind of have that same kind of dynamic, with Will and Jack and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You kind of have that Han, Luke, Leia thing going on. And I think other than that, the only trilogy that people talk about in between would be Lord of the Rings. But I think it's very different. That's not about, it's not kind of that same kind of fun swashbuckling adventure that Star Wars and Pirates.
No, it's very serious and has fun elements to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pirates and Star Wars is more trying to be fun.
Yeah, I feel like it's very much the same kind of vein of tone and everything. And so I love it. And so I loved especially by the time I saw 2 and 3, when people were coming to the theater like dressed up for opening night of these movies. I'm like, I'm loving this. This reminds me of me when I was a kid seeing new Star Wars movies come out.
Yeah,
like you said, 4 and 5, I think that they're fine movies, but they're nowhere near as good as the first 2. And I think that those last 2 are kind of what I expected the first one to feel like, but it wasn't. It blew away my expectations. But then it kind of ran out of gas towards the end.
Yeah, my best friend Ryan, who I brought up on the show before, who has horrifically bad movie tastes. One of his favorite movies is fucking Freddy Got Fingered. That says it all right there. Granted, because he loves Tom Green. This ended up this franchise, or at least the trilogy, that ended up becoming one of his favorite films, if not favorite trilogies of all time. It was one of those that's like, even he was like, I love these. And I'm like, really? Because I just expect you to have bad movie taste. And I was just like, you love these movies? He's like, yeah, man. Because it's kind of like a thing with me and my mom. Like every time that comes out, like me and her have to go see this together. This is like our thing. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like great. His tastes have gotten better. This was like teenage, Ryan, when he was like, I'm just going to actively say that, I like these movies or hate these movies to piss Sean off because he just loved getting under my skin. Now he's got better movie taste. But Pirates was like the one thing that he was like, no, I love these films. So to get him to stop being kind of a D-bag when it came to movies, to go, no, these movies are great, that also spoke volumes to me as well. I'll go again since I took Brian's top choice. This also probably is going to be on Brian's list, so if not, I'm shocked, because we both have a unabashed love for this film, even though we have both gotten chastised for loving this film as much as we have. We both love this movie so much. We're back in Michael Bay world, and that's Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 2. Oh, man, Bad Boys 2. We both love Bad Boys. This is definitely my favorite of the Bad Boys films. Is it over the top? Yes. Is there maybe too many action scenes? Yes. Is it Michael Bayisms too, like, on acid to the nth degree? Yes. Do I love it? Fucking absolutely. It is so damn good and over the top and funny, and so many action scenes and so many scenes that probably weren't needed. Even the moments where the main bad guy, I can't remember the actual actor's name, his English is so bad, but there's like the little moments where like he kills his henchman and his mom shows up. What happened to Bluto? Oh, he shot himself. Oh, yeah, it's terrible. Okay, bye. It just walks. It's stupid little scenes like that, or Martin Lawrence on ecstasy, or the entrance of Reggie. That amazing scene with Reggie and Will and Martin. But the action scenes, there's so many. There's the morgue scene the more car chase scene. There's the original scene where they're chasing after Gabrielle Union, and they're basically destroying so many beautiful cars in that scene. There's the whole final act with them ripping through so many homes. So many people became homeless in that final scene. There's so many phenomenal action set pieces in this. Like, I'm surprised the budget for this isn't like one of the most expensive movies ever made. Like, I'm surprised it was expensive, but it could have been so much fucking more expensive.
Well, it helps when Michael Bay like reuses shots from his other movies.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And you know what? That should be a huge black mark on a lot of people. But for some reason, Michael Bay, it's like he's got his cut corners somewhere.
Yeah, just go on YouTube and look up like Michael Bay recycled footage or whatever. You'll see shots from like The Island and Bad Boys 2 and Transformers, and that there's the exact same shot, like the same cars, they crush in the same way. They just CGI'd in like a transformer there to crush it. And it's quite hilarious. So check that out. But Bad Boys
hilarious, and it shouldn't be allowed and it shouldn't be funny. But for some reason with Michael Bay, it's like it fits.
Yeah, I love Michael Bay, and this is I think the movie where Michael Bay became the Michael Bay we know, because he had done The Rock, he'd done Bad Boys, he kind of had gotten his action, his footing, but this is the movie where he decided, I'm just going to be the over the top guy, and all of the action is over the top, and everything, all the Michael Bayisms that he would use for the rest of his career kind of solidified in this movie, but in the kind of the best way possible, because I enjoyed the hell out of it. And it's one of those movies people will say, aged poorly or is politically incorrect. I don't give a shit. That's some of the funniest stuff in the movie. Have a sense of humor, people.
And the reason why it works the way it does is because Martin and Will are 1,000% on board. They are 100% bought in to what Bay's doing, and then they add their gravitas to it as well, which is why it works the way it works.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I agree. Love Bad Boys 2.
Was it on your list?
It did not make my list. It just missed the cut.
We were going to go through this whole thing without Bad Boys being talked about?
There's a whole lot of movies I like in the 2000s, and I honestly, I kind of assumed you'd have it, so I thought it was safe leaving it off.
Okay.
We're still going to have some overlap, but I'm like,
what would have happened if I didn't bring it up?
I mean, I still have it. There's plenty of great action movies that we aren't including on our list at all.
I told Brian before we started, I was like, I feel like there's only 2 movies that we're gonna be incongruent with, and Bad Boys was one of them. The other one we haven't gotten to yet. I didn't think it was gonna be Pirates, and I definitely didn't think Crouching Tiger we were gonna be on the same page.
I'm crazy about Pirates.
Yeah. But Bad Boys 2 is so fucking great.
Okay. My next one is the one exception I made to the comic book thing, and I did include the first Iron Man, because at the time MCU wasn't a thing. At the time, this was, as far as we know, just a one-off action movie, happened to be based on a comic book. There had been like the Batman trilogy and Spider-Man and X-Men, but Marvel hadn't really been doing anything, and this is just kind of a one-off of honestly kind of a B or C list Marvel character. It had Shane Black directing, who I love Shane Black, and he was coming off of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He had Robert Downey Jr., who was making his resurgence also via Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I'm sorry, Shane Black didn't direct this, and he did help punch up the script, though. That's what I meant to say. It was Jon Favreau who directed this one. This is a movie, again, that I kind of went in with relatively low expectations. I mean, there was a big deal being made about how Marvel was going to be making their own movies now. Instead of license them out to Sony or whoever, or Fox, we're going to make our own movies, but we didn't know if they could be good. You would have Robert Downey Jr. in a starring role of an action film, which is kind of, unusual choice. But I mean, once you've seen the movie, once you know the character of Tony Stark, you cannot think of an actor more perfect for the role of Tony Stark than he is. But this is the movie that launched the biggest franchise of movie history. I mean, this is what started off it all, and it started it off on such a great note, and it kind of defined the tone for the whole franchise, where you can have this action and cool serious moments, you can have emotional moments, but you can still have some lightheartedness, you can have some joking. It doesn't feel just like random jokes inserted. It feels like that's just who this character is. And so much of that is because of Robert Downey Jr. and how perfectly he plays this role. And not just the comedic moments. I mean, those moments when, you know, he realizes that his whole life of being basically warmongering and profiting off weapons, and he realizes, you know, that he needs to turn his life around and change it, and he's going to use these weapons for good and blah blah blah. But everything about that works. So this is a movie that I think just blew everyone away when it came out. I mean, even if you were optimistic about it, I don't think anybody expected to be as good as it was. And then also, like I said, for what it did as far as launching the entire MCU, it deserves the credit.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Iron Man when it first came out. I don't think I love it as much as a lot of people do. Like, I think it was a great starting point, but then once all the other ones came out, like, it just kind of kept moving further and further down my list. So I don't really hold it in the same, like, oh, it's the one that started, so it needs to be up near the top. It's like, no, it's good, but it has its problems. Like, I don't think Terrence Howard was the right fit for Rooney, which is why Don Cheadle took over. And well, it's not why he took over. It's because Terrence Howard's kind of a dick. But I think Cheadle did a better job at it. I think, oh my God, blanking on his name. Obadiah Stane, actor.
Oh, Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff Bridges. I think he could have been utilized a lot more than what he was in the film. I think that's where it started the trend of Marvel can't do villains well. I think he was a potentially great villain that just didn't get utilized to his full potential. I got nothing negative to say about Robert Downey Jr. He's fucking amazing. It much like Johnny Depp with Jack Sparrow. This revolutionized Robert Downey's career, and he was fucking brilliant with his contract negotiations because now he literally doesn't have to do a single thing for the rest of his life, and he's good. Not that he's not going to not do anything because he'll get bored because it's Robert Downey Jr. Paltrow's great. Jon Favreau, who directed it, is great as Happy. I think the action was a great starting off point for what we were going to get to. So I think it definitely, obviously, it's the movie that launched, billions of dollars and 40 plus films now. Not 40, but we're gonna get to 40. But I think it's good. I think it was good for its time, but now I think it's still good, but I don't think it is where it could have been. But also, as I said, it was starting out. So.
I think the villain, as far as the villain, that felt like a 2000s villain. It felt like here's the villain of the week for this one movie. And I think part of that is because, it wasn't until after they kind of got running, hit that first Avengers with like, okay, we're going to build towards ongoing stories, as well as we're going to, those first couple movies were very grounded in reality. And of course, they went into outer space, and then they went into magic, and they went into all kinds of more stuff that's hugely expanded the universe. Whereas this first one was supposed to feel very like, just on the ground and real. So
I just wasn't a huge fan of the final battle.
It was underwhelming, but I imagine at the time they probably didn't have a giant budget on this movie because there was not known. It wasn't hadn't the trust that they could spend this money and make their money back on it. So
no, I agree. But then when you put it up against like Hulk, which was also kind of around the same time, Abomination Hulk did way more in their final fight than what Obadiah and Stark did. But I mean, like I say, I'm not trying to shit on the movie. I do enjoy Iron Man. But that's just why it wasn't on my list for it. But I mean, in terms of comic book movies, I mean, it would probably be because it deserves to be.
Yeah, and like we said, this is the last one because like once you get into 2010s and 2020s, I will not include comic book movies on my list. But I felt this one, because it wasn't a franchise at the time, it was kind of, this is the one that hit so well that it started things off. I decided to include it on my list.
Speaking of launching something, this is another movie that I think Brian and I both love, that a lot of people either just dismissed or didn't care for or just didn't really pay much attention to. But I know Brian and I both enjoy this movie, and if I had not just watched it literally within the last month, it may not have been. I mean, I probably would have, but I could see myself maybe forgetting about it. And that's Troy. Troy is I fucking love Troy. The face that launched 1,000 ships. Helen of Troy. Brad, probably one of my favorite, if not my top two, because I'll probably be talking about it next potentially. Favorite performance of Brad Pitt. I love him as Achilles. From the first fucking scene, he has got line after line after line. That one moment with the little kid was like, are you scared fighting that guy? I'd be scared. That's why no one will remember your name. And the introduction of Achilles is one of my favorite introductions to a character. You know, you have this guy, you know, not that Brad Pitt's a small dude, but compared to Nathan Jones, who's like a fucking, you know, over 6 feet tall pro wrestler, and just runs up to him and just one move, boom, done. And, you know, to the point where he talks to his men on the ship before they attack Sparta, or Troy, basically. He is so charismatically amazing in this film. Eric Bana, another actor I'm not super crazy on, but I love him as Hector in this film. Orlando Bloom, we love him as Legolas. We love him as Will Turner. He's such a fucking little bitch in this movie, and I love that he was able to flip the script and be a little bitch in this movie. Diane Kruger is great. Brian Cox is great. Sean Bean. There's so many great cast members in this film. It's funny to me now, but I remember it bothered me in when it came out. Peter O'Toole, an iconic actor. He's great. But he always he really smells a really bad fart in this movie. Like, there's the scene, which once again, one of my favorite choreographed scenes is when Achilles and Hector fights, and obviously Achilles wins and he's dragging Hector away, and they do like an upward camera shot of Peter O'Toole, and he's like, and it's just like he smelled a bad fart. It just
Joey Tribbiani smelled the fart acting.
Yes, it is. It is the smell the fart acting. Rose Byrne, she was a relative nobody in this movie, and this is when I first noticed her.
I'm saying in this movie, she's more beautiful than Diane Kruger, who launched 1,000 ships. Supposedly, come on.
Well, true, but
Rose Byrne.
It is. It's Rose Byrne. I love how they, and it wasn't necessarily innovative, but it was more how they had Brad Pitt move in this movie. He wasn't like just your regular like run up and slash. He had like the bounce, like the back part. He was like a cat.
He had a swagger. They made him like a celebrity.
Yes, he was. And then he had this the way his shield was curved so he could flip and move the spear through. Like, his fighting tactics and the way they put him through this movie and the way he trained his ass off for this fucking movie. I just love Troy. I love this movie so much. Like I said, and I watched it less than a month ago, and it just solidified everything that I remembered about it. And when I knew we were gonna do this show, I was like, I don't even know where it's gonna end up, but I'm writing Troy down right now, just so that way I don't forget about it. I love this movie so much.
You know, I didn't put it on my list, and
I didn't think it because I figured you wouldn't have remembered. Not that you would have forgotten about it, but you wouldn't have thought about it.
And now that I'm looking at it, I think Letterboxd didn't include it when I filtered by action movies. I think it's the only reason I didn't think about it. Weird.
I figured you just would have not.
But that's great because I'm glad you talked about it because then I can, because I love this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's I think Brad Pitt's character, what they did with him, and like I said, they kind of made him in like this. He's like a celebrity, you know, in there. People look up to him, and he does have that swagger to him. But the fighting style is amazing. He even has a finishing move, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I thought that was good. This is another one of those ensemble casts that goes all the way down, kind of like we were talking about with Black Hawk Down. And it's a movie that I agree. I think not enough people really give this movie its props. And there was a director's cut, which I don't remember if it made a whole lot of a difference, but it added a chunk of time. And I think I enjoyed it, but it wasn't one of those things where I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was needed either. I really don't. I don't know if it's just more blood splatter kind of thing, but
I feel like it's one of those ones. It probably had more like, you know, talky scenes inserted back into it too, because it wasn't like an unrated thing. It was just a director's cut, which I think this director's cut was one of those that like these are interesting additional scenes to see once you've seen the film and you enjoy the film. But if they had been the original cut, it would have felt bloated.
Yeah.
But yeah, love Troy.
Yeah.
I think you thought this. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and jump to what would have been. I have two left.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump to what would have been my number 2 after Pirates, but I'm gonna talk about it now just because I think you're expecting this one to be coming because you talked about Brad Pitt, and that's Mr. and Mrs. Smith,
which is my next one. So okay. Yes,
that's why I figure I'll just jump to that.
This was like I figured Bad Boys and Mr. and Mrs. Smith was gonna be on your list because I know how much you and I both love Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Behind Pirates, but I'll talk about it now. This is fucking just so much fun. I think this movie is about the perfect blend of like action and comedy, and Brad Pitt is kind of the perfect person to play that because they're definitely like comedic actors who can be in an action film and be convincing, and action films who can be in like action comedies and they can still handle the comedy. But Brad Pitt, I think he handles the action so well, as you see in things like Troy, and obviously the action scenes in this movie. But he also is so good at comedy. You see everything from uh, uh, 12 Monkeys to Burn After Reading, or whatever else he does. I think he has a good comedic timing to him as well, and he can be a lot of fun. And then you put Angelina Jolie in this movie with him, who is great at doing action herself, as we saw in many other films, she's Wanted and the Tomb Raiders, things like that. But then the chemistry between the two of them is so off the charts. It's
which started a whole other problem off the scenes. But yeah,
but I think that their chemistry is some of the best on screen in movie history. I think I totally buy them being into each other, clearly for reasons that it was very convincing. But yeah, and this is a movie that it's directed by Doug Liman, the same guy who did like Swingers and Go and Edge of Tomorrow. So I really like his films. I think the soundtrack, it's a lot of kind of Spanish guitar to it and things like that. I think that the score was really really interesting, and the supporting cast, honestly, it's one of those movies that at the time you didn't know most of the cast. Then you look at it now,
oh yeah,
and in tiny roles you have like Kerry Washington and Michelle Monaghan and all these places.
Jennifer Morrison, yeah,
and then you have like Vince Vaughn is in a small role. And he was big at the time, but he was only in a small role in the movie. But yeah, this movie, if I'm just thinking what's the most fun action movie of the decade, behind Pirates is going to be this.
Yeah, the chemistry between Brad and Angelina are just insane in this movie. I mean, they're both incredibly beautiful people. Angelina is fucking gorgeous in this film, and she knows it. Brad, I've always been a fan of the Brad Pitt buzz cut. I've always loved it when he does movies where he's got the buzz cut. Not that dictates where it's a good movie or a bad movie, because I mean, I got him in Troy with long hair, but I've always loved him with a buzz cut hair. I love how they can have these brutal fight scenes while still just having normal conversations that you don't have. Like the car chase scene where I can't remember, he was like, you're like, oh, that was an actor. I told you I saw him on an episode of this. I know. They're comedic back and forth between them, because I don't think of Angelina Jolie as funny. I think her as like a badass, sexy woman who can do drama, and her comedic timing through this is great, and the way they feed off of each other, for obvious reasons we know later, is great. Like, I still think one of my favorite little like nugget moments is when he's trying to break into their building, and they like bungee crossbow across the thing, and they're yelling at each other, and she yells "pussy" to him, and like his face is like kind of just like a little like kind of face. Like, it's just like these little moments here and there, and then you throw like them fighting each other in the house, which is such a beautifully choreographed fight sequence where they are using literally everything in that house against each other. To even it's not Home Depot or Lowe's, but it's like a hardware kind of store, and just the way they were able to shoot that and utilize everything at their disposal in that house or in that store. The next closest one would be the first Equalizer film. Was able to do that really, really well, and everything is just shot so well, choreographed so well, acted so well. Everything looks great. It's like you said, it's a fun ride, and I enjoy every single second of that movie.
Yeah.
The TV show, though, not so much. It was not that good.
Well, the TV show had nothing to do with the movie.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, the name, and there are a couple who are assassins. It like had nothing to do. I had no interest in that show. I didn't even watch it.
And I love Donald Glover, and even I didn't love I didn't love the show, but the movie though is great, and it's surprising that they didn't do a sequel, because this is 2000s, and you would have thought, especially since they got together after they shot this, oh, we're totally doing a Mr. and Mrs. Smith 2, and it never happened. So it's
Yeah,
one of
I
those
don't know why,
perfect
and it
one.
made money, so I don't know why they
It
never
would
did.
have. Oh yeah, because of their chemistry alone, off the charts, and the action, it would have made so much money had they done a second one, and they never did it. Yeah. So we both got one left. Mine is the one where I'm breaking my comic book rule because this is a graphic comic. This movie is hands down one of my favorite films. I know I've been saying that about pretty much almost every movie in our faves here. Endlessly quotable, phenomenal action. I think it looks amazing for what it's doing. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I love what they did with this film. I love just how randomly weird it goes in certain scenes that's not necessarily needed, but it was like that in the comics. So they were trying to keep it as accurate as can be. I know I keep saying shat. I'm not British. I know we shit on him earlier for overrated at one point, but he hit on all cylinders here. I know Brian's not as big of a fan as it is for me, but 300. 300 is one of my favorite action films of all time. Gerard Butler will always be King Leonidas to me. This also introduced Michael Fassbender. Hands down, probably one of my favorite lines in movie history for him when he's talking to the guy and he's like, "Our arrows will blot out the sun, then we will fight in the shade." That's such a fucking badass fucking line. I love the cast that we got. Lena Headey is great in her as the queen. I love the action of this movie. Once again, everything that Brad Pitt did as Achilles in Troy, it was this times 300. Literally. I love how much these guys, all these actors, worked their ass off to get the bodies they did. I mean, they literally created their own workout for this movie. 300 is endlessly quotable. I could quote this movie all day. Every line to me in this movie is a banger for this. I enjoy this movie to the nth degree. I'll never get tired of watching this. The sequel is fine. The best part about it is Ava Green, who I wish she was doing more stuff because she's one of my favorites, and she doesn't do much anymore. But the sequel is just fine. 300 to me is in my eyes near perfect for what it is, and I thought Zack Snyder did a fantastic job directing this movie. I love everything about this film. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I fucking love 300 so goddamn much.
So right here you have Leonidas figure. Right here you have a Leonidas Funko Pop. Somewhere around here you have the original graphic novel. I love
my graphic novel's over in the other room.
I'm surprised you think I wouldn't have this on my list. This was the remaining one on my list.
I didn't think you were as big a 300 fan as me.
No, it was my number 3 behind Pirates and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I had it on my list.
I thought I was gonna have to spend 300. All right, great.
No, I love 300. Now I think maybe because you think just because of my opinions on Zack Snyder, a lot of his stuff in more recent years. But this, I think, is by far his best film,
without a doubt,
by a mile. And I think a lot of it is part of it is the source material, which is this great graphic novel. But part of it's in how he chose to adapt it, and he chose to basically bring a graphic novel to the screen. He basically every shot of this movie is a gorgeous visual painting. They essentially took the graphic novel and used that as their storyboards. So every shot is getting to the next panel's picture. And you can tell because everything about this, every shadow, every framing of things, it's beautifully done. You have the way the Zack Snyder style, which this is kind of the pinnacle of it with his super slow-mo use, and kind of that kind of surreal or not quite real look to it. Everything, the color's a little bit off. The blood is definitely kind of CG, but it works because it's an intentional visual style they're going for to bring a graphic novel to the screen. And here it works completely. Now, would he go on to overuse that slow-mo and stuff in the future? Yes, we've talked about that 1,000 times, so I won't go into that anymore. But I think this was like the pinnacle of Zack Snyder's filmmaking where everything worked. And I think it's because he was applying the right style to the right source material. And it was unique at the time. It was new. It was different. Yeah, Gerard Butler, who is kind of somebody people had heard of, but this is kind of the movie that made him break out, especially in doing action films. I thought he was perfect for that role, and the whole cast down the line is great. But really, this movie is all about the look of it, and as good as everything else about it is, as good as the score is, as good as the acting is, the look of this film is what makes it stand out as something so different, so unique, and I loved it. And the sequel, I enjoy almost as much as the first, honestly. The spoiler alert, this is probably going, I haven't done my list yet. This will probably be in my underrated films of 2010s, the sequel. Because I love the sequel, and
it's in my contention for underrated.
And I mean, I'll talk about it more there, I'm sure, at some point. But I just want to say, because as it relates to this movie, I love what they did. It's a sidequel. It like takes place before, during, and after, like alongside this the first film taking place,
Yeah.
and it kind of intertwine. And I love that about it. I thought that was such a smart way to do it. And of course, it goes back to, again, the source material, which was a follow-up book called Xerxes that was done for the graphic novel. But yeah, this is a movie that I've always loved, and as much as Zack Snyder can be very hit and miss, this is his best film.
This was also, but we talked about it in the 90s, that Twister was both of our first DVDs. 300 was my first Blu-ray.
It was definitely one of my first.
And what sucked about it is that it was my first Blu-ray, and it was not great quality. They had not gotten the background figured out, so it was super fucking grainy. They came out with a newer version of it that had fixed that. But yeah, 300 was my very first Blu-ray disc, and I was so excited for it. And I was watching, I was like, is it supposed to be this grainy? Because this is before we really knew Blu-ray. But yeah, I always remember my very, very first of everything of that, and like 300 was my very, very first Blu-ray, and it wasn't the greatest, but I was still happy I had it though. But yeah. But what were your guys' options or choices? Did you guys agree with us, disagree with us? What were your favorite action films of the 2000s? Are you mad that we both didn't like, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or The Bournes? Or do you guys agree with us on our underrateds and our favorites of the year? Let us know in the comments below. What were your favorites? But we will be back here next week for the 2010s. Definitely a hard list as well. I like I said, I thought this week we were gonna be less on the same page. We seem to be more on the same page this time. I was shocked how well Brian and I were pretty much kind of right on there with each other. It'll be interesting to see if 2010s were kind of on the same wavelength. But we hope you guys are enjoying this journey with us. We hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you guys did, like, share, comment, follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. And hopefully you continue with us next week for Decades of Action 2010s. I'm Sean Waskrug. That is Brian Michaels. Until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies, go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for Deadpool 2. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? Sam Jackson show up with an eye patch and a saucy little leather number? Go. Oh, but I can tell you one thing, and it's a bit of a secret. For the sequel, we're gonna have Cable. Amazing character, bionic arm, time travel. We have no idea who we're gonna cast yet, but it could be anybody. Just need a big guy with a flat top. Could be Mel Gibson, Dolph Lundgren, Keira Knightley. She's got range, who knows? Anyway, big secret. Shh. Oh, and don't leave your garbage all lying around. It's a total dick move. Go.